Chapter 1075. Some people tried to sneak up to the door of Screening Hall 14 to see what was going on, but they were stopped by countless burly bodyguards. What the hell? Why didn't anyone leave early? How would I know? Did the Huaxia people put superglue on their chairs? Did they stick their butts on it? It's not impossible. An hour and a half later, I'm already planning to write a script. An unprecedented scandal in the history of the film industry. Crazy Huaxia tycoons put their guests under house arrest in the screening hall to let people finish watching their trashy movie. What do you think of my title? It's pretty good, but you're too slow. I've already written it, and the meaning is similar to yours. I'll send it to the chief editor after the premiere. Can you two stop joking around? Would you dare to put a Nobel Prize winner under house arrest, even if you had 10 guts? And the CEOs of several airline companies around the world? Oh, and Big Shio, Mouthy Connor, John Sinan, and Hamilton? What else? Can you give us a more reasonable explanation? Chen Guang's movie is especially good? How can these big shots whose time is like gold be reluctant to leave? That's ridiculous. As far as I know, many guests at premieres often just go through the motions at the beginning and leave very quickly. They can't finish watching the movie in the first place. This is the established rule in the industry. It's too hard to understand why these big shots would sit in the theater for 2 hours. Do you know how much Mouthy Connor gets to attend a fashion brand launch that only lasts for half an hour? $800,000. But they really haven't come out yet. Finally, a full 2 hours passed. The door of Screening Hall 14 opened with a loud bang. There is no scene that the reporters and the main producers of the other movies had imagined, and no one rushed out of the door. Everyone thought that the audience who was locked inside would flee in panic. Now, they realized that they were wrong. The first to walk out were the big shots of the medical world. Each of them held a book in their hands and looked dazed. The atmosphere was extremely solemn. No one communicated with each other, nor did they whisper. They just frowned and fell into deep thought. Behind the big shots of the medical world were linguists and pianists. These people also seemed to be possessed. All of them were silent and had a book in their hands. The big shots of the media circle pounced on them in a frenzy. Mr. Neuer, may I ask if your personal freedom is restricted in the theater? Mr. Wieland, how do you feel about this movie? Do you think Chen Guang's performance in the movie is worthy of an actor? Countless questions were fired from the mouths of the big shots in the media circle towards the big shots and the audience. Fortunately, the bodyguards brought by the fighting superstars were very strong. They formed 2 human walls and blocked all the reporters outside. Of course, these were all giants in the academic world. Unlike ordinary celebrities, the reporters did not dare to be as impulsive as they were to entertainment figures. But no one answered their question. It was as if they had lost their minds and were completely immersed in their own world, not paying attention to what was happening outside. The reporters' punches all hit the air, and they couldn't help but look at each other. What happened in the theater? This doesn't make sense, right? Even if it was a normal person, after watching a movie, they would more or less say something when asked by others. What was going on with them now? Could it be that the Huaxia people had drugged the theater and made everyone faint for 2 hours? That's even more ridiculous. This will land him in jail for a long time. What kind of trick did he use? A mysterious power from the East? Everyone in the theater was hypnotized. Finally, when some young faces appear at the back of the crowd, the reporters and the other film staff watching the situation saw some different expressions. These young esports players were very excited. Behind the esports players were many big names in the martial arts circle. They were even more excited than the esports players. Mr. Sinan, may I ask if this movie, it's amazing. It's incomparable. I can't find any words to describe how perfect it is. I swear I've never seen such a perfect performance in my life. No, it can't even be called a performance anymore. Mr. Chun showed us the whole world. By the way, if you have the chance, I suggest you buy his book. It's the one in my hand. Before the reporter could finish his question, Sinan had already interrupted him and waved the first volume of World Faction in his hand. Mr. Sinan, what happened to the movie? The reporters continued to ask, unwilling to give up. The strong Sinan had a mischievous smile on his face. He blinked and said, "Why are you asking me? Can't you afford to pay for a movie ticket? Mr. Damon from the Washington Post. Sorry, my mind is full of movies now. I can't wait to go back to the hotel and find a quiet place to read Mr. Chin's book. Sorry, I have to go. Sinan left quickly after saying that, even though the person who asked him was actually an acquaintance of his in the media circle. Further ahead, young esports players were also being interviewed. They were 10 times more excited than John Sinan. The reporters, who were trying to dig out some dirt from these people, found that they couldn't find an entry point to discredit the movie from the mouths of the brainless fans who were so excited that they were talking incoherently about Chun Guang's movie. Perfect. It's never been so perfect. Chun Guang is the real best actor. I swear. Mao Yongren said, I'm proud that I have the same skin color and race as him. Don't ask me anything, and I don't want to talk to anyone. I've never liked movies, but tonight I realized how shallow I am. You really should buy tickets to go to the cinema, or you'll regret it for the rest of your life. The reporters didn't expect such a scene at all. The people who came out of the screening hall were acting so strangely. Did you mistakenly enter the legendary Amway group and get lectured? You guys are very abnormal. The reporters had seen classic movies with good reputation in box office, but they had never seen such a good movie that could make celebrities shamelessly flatter it without any bottom line. For a person like Sinan, even if he was paid, he couldn't brag about a bad movie like this. Otherwise, his personal image would be greatly damaged. This couldn't be called a good movie at all. This was Da Vinci's Mona Lisa, right? Finally, the old men, women, and aunties from the community service station filed out at the back of the crowd. The reporters thought to themselves, we may not get a fair evaluation from the guests who have been paid, but it should be okay for us to interview the ordinary audience, right? They were doomed to get nothing from the celebrities, so they could only count on the ordinary audience. A noble woman dressed in luxurious clothes was surrounded by many people from the community service station. The reporters undoubtedly noticed her at the first moment. May I ask this beautiful lady, what do you think of the movie you watched today? The plump lady tidied up her slightly fluffy blonde hair, blushed, and said excitedly, I don't know how to express my feelings at this time, but I can't wait to invite everyone in the world to the cinema. Wait a minute. Aren't you Mrs. Joshdan? Someone recognized the noble woman. Jenny Joshdan didn't feel that there was a problem at all. She pointed to her face and said, I am indeed Jenny Joshdan. Is there a problem? Isn't your husband? The reporter was slightly embarrassed. He wanted to say something, but stopped. As a well-informed reporter in the industry, he naturally knew that Donald and his wife didn't get along. One was a crazy old man from the Joshdan family who loved movies, and the other was a lady from the aristocratic Edward family who hated movies. Their marriage from the beginning was a huge mistake. This was a taboo in the media circle. Whoever mentioned it would be hated by the petty Donald. Donald is Donald, and I am me. But you used to hate movies. The reporter finally couldn't hold it in. Jenny was stunned at first, but she didn't get angry. Instead, she smiled and said, That's right, but that was in the past. From tonight onwards, I've changed my mind. I admit that movies are actually a very good art. In the past, I did hate movies for no reason because I felt that this D*Ned thing first took away my husband, and then my son. But today, I understand that what I hate is only bad movies. The movies in the past weren't enough to make me feel moved and intoxicated. Now, I can roughly understand why my stubborn husband and equally stubborn son were willing to work so hard for this art. As soon as Madame Joshdan said that, the reporters and the other crew members who were eavesdropping at the side were completely stunned. In a sense, this was probably the highest praise that could possibly appear on Earth. It was only a 2-hour movie, yet Mrs. Joshdan, who hated movies and was said to have been a domestic abuser of Donald for more than 20 years, had a change of heart. The most outrageous thing was that she actually said that all the movies in the past were bad movies, and that was why she hated movies. Do you know how many people you've offended by saying that? You've negated all the works in the history of the human film industry for more than 100 years, all for the sake of today's movie. What's worse is that this movie has completely overshadowed your husband and son's decades of persistence. You're actually starting to understand their dreams? This isn't a F*** king movie, it's a hallucinogenic drug, right? Finally, The reporter who asked the first question reacted and found another hot topic in time. Madam Joshdan, does this mean that you'll support your husband and son's career in the future? Madam Joshdan thought about it. Not necessarily. All right, I have to go home. I have a lot to talk to Donald about. After Jenny finished speaking, she turned to look at a huge camera at the side. It was a live broadcast from the Los Angeles Entertainment Channel. She pointed at the camera. Donald, I know you're watching TV. Don't fall asleep before I get home. Look at the book in my hand. You really have to learn it well. I'll also have a good discussion with you about the movies that you want to persevere in. After saying that, Jenny held the first volume of World's Pie in front of the camera. She paused for a few seconds before putting the book away. Then, she walked further and further away, surrounded by her fellow community members. Chapter 1076. At that moment, Donald, who was sitting in front of the TV, almost fainted. His hands trembled as he picked up the heart medication and threw it into his mouth. My God! He felt like he had seen a ghost. At the same time, he was considering whether he should run away from home. He was worried that he would not be able to see the sun rise the next day when his wife came back. Meanwhile, the reporters finally saw the cover and title of the book. World School of Performing Arts. Shocking. All right, the long list of names was too long. Don't mind the details. The book was beautifully packaged, but it did not show the name of the publisher. It was probably a printed product produced by the Huaxia tycoon, Chen Guang, at his own expense. It could not be considered a publication. But what the hell was with the cover photo? That Huaxia man, Chen Guang himself? How shameless must you be to print your own photo on the cover of a book like that? Is this the performing arts monograph that you were talking about? I don't care how you wrote it, or what you wrote in it, or whether you wrote it yourself. But isn't it a little too shameless to use your own photo on the cover? You could probably land on the moon if you were to fold your skin in half. At that moment, Chen Guang was still standing at the entrance of Theater 14 with a smile. He greeted everyone who came out of the theater warmly and expressed his gratitude. When most of the people had left and the bodyguards had left one after another, he walked out surrounded by the employees of the Tianguang group. Mr. Chen, may I ask what you did to the audience in the theater? Chen Guang looked at the tall white reporter with a hooked nose and smirked. I played a movie for them and gave each of them a book that I wrote. That's all. Impossible. You must have done something shameful. You Huaxia people have always been like this. Chen Guang snorted. Do you dare to bet your grandmother's health on me? I can sue you for racial discrimination. The white reporter's expression changed. I'm sorry, I didn't choose the right words. But I think your movie is definitely not as perfect as they say it is. It's not realistic. What did you do to Madame Joshdan? Chen Guang was stunned at first. Madame Joshdan? Who? You actually don't know. Jenny Joshtyne, wife of Mr. Donald Joshtyne. She just came out of the theater. After a brief moment of confusion, Chen Guang's anger quickly overflowed. I really don't know. F.A. All right, that despicable Joshdan. I thought it would be enough to block the reporters, but he actually let his wife sneak into the audience. Is he trying to attack me himself? Despicable. Shameless. The reporters and the other crew members looked at each other. For some reason, they suddenly had a strong urge to strangle this man. Too much, really too much. You can't pretend like that. Madame Joshtyne praises you to the heavens, and you call her despicable. Doesn't your conscience reproach you? But this also proved a terrifying fact. Chen Guang really didn't seem to have done anything. He didn't even know what had happened in the theater. No, Chen Guang from Huaxia. This is a recording of Madame Joshton's interview that I just recorded with my phone. You can take a look. Chen Guang received the phone with doubt in his heart. But a brief moment later, his face had miraculously turned slightly red. Although it was quite comfortable to be praised, this kind-looking Madame Joshdan had praised him a little too much. Fortunately, he was thick-skinned enough. Anyone else would not have been able to take it. It was hard to believe that this was the wife of that sneaky old man, Donald. This guy must have been a war doctor in his previous life. He must have saved at least 10,000 wounded people in World War II. He must have done a great service to be able to marry such a discerning and unique wife. Chen Guang, don't you feel ashamed? The reporter took the phone back and fired shot at him. Chen Guang shrugged. Why should I feel ashamed? Do you think you can take such a heavy evaluation? Chen Guang looked at him as if he was looking at an idiot. Why can't I take it? Have you seen my movies? Where did you get the right to speak? Suddenly, the long corridor fell silent. Hearing Chen Guang's tone, he actually accepted Madame Joshton's crazy words. He felt no pressure and felt that it was only natural. This meant that he really felt that he could suppress all the classic works in the history of the film industry. How arrogant! How arrogant! How arrogant and condescending! How belittling the heroes of the world! No, not only did he belittle the heroes of the world, but he also did not let go of the seniors of the film industry who had passed away. Although they had always felt that this Huaxia man was especially arrogant and had even been molded by public opinion into a devil who had suddenly appeared in the film industry. Many reporters were already mentally prepared for his possible attitude, but now they realized that they had been too optimistic about the situation. Or rather, this Huaxia man's arrogance was a little too exaggerated. Compared to his current performance, it was child's play for him to aim for an Oscar in his first movie. There was no limit to his arrogance. His arrogance and domineeringness had broken history, and his shamelessness had reached a new height of human shamelessness. Crazy, completely crazy. Have you eaten up the word modesty in your dictionary? Do you know what you're saying? Chen Guang instantly fell into a state of being criticized by thousands of people, but his expression did not change. He only looked at the crowd calmly. Are you guys done? His voice was very low, but it had an inexplicable majesty to it, causing the noisy corridor to return to silence in an instant. You guys are really strange. These words did not come from my own mouth, but from other people's evaluation of me and my work. Then, why are you guys questioning me here? Don't you think this is ridiculous? You guys have completely violated the professional ethics of a media person. You guys have been biased from the beginning, which is why you're saying such things to me now. The next show will start in half an hour. You haven't even watched it, so how can you judge my movie? It's just like how I've never seen your wife, but I say she is ugly. Will you be happy? After the premiere, even Joshton's wife had become his die-hard fan. The movie's effect was better than he had imagined. Now, Chen Guang had more confidence in his words. He couldn't be bothered to be courteous with the reporters and decisively started to act like a rooster. The hook-nosed reporter who had been scolded by him did not agree. Your accusation is without reason. In my heart, my wife is the most beautiful woman in the world, and my doubts about you are reasonable. You have never acted in a movie before. Yes, but there is an absolute relationship between love and appearance. I can't see what your wife looks like from your face. Your sophistry. You can understand it that way, but it doesn't matter. There is still 15 minutes to 10:30. I advise you to hurry up, or I'm afraid you won't be able to buy the tickets for the first screening. In fact, he was bragging. The attendance at the Huaxia Theater in Hollywood would probably be very good, but there was no hope for the other theaters to make a comeback, at least for today. If they were nimble, they could run out of the Huaxia Theater in 10 minutes to another large theater. It should be very easy to buy tickets there. After saying that, Chen Guang turned around and left. After taking 2 steps, he turned back again, took a deep breath, and said heavily, "Anyway, you won't believe anything I say now. No matter if I'm low-key or arrogant now, you will still write about me in the news tomorrow. So, I will say it clearly. Yes, I do believe in one thing. You have to prick up your ears and listen carefully. My movie may not be perfect or the best, but my personal acting art will definitely be epic-making. Unprecedented. Enough to be recorded in the history books. Just like everything else I have done before. You'd better memorize every single word I said, because 100 years later, my words will appear in every film history course in every film academy." After saying that, he really left this time, leaving behind a dumbfounded face of the media and other film producers. Their brains were completely shaken to the point that their worldview was about to collapse. Everyone felt that something was wrong. What this Huaxia man said was too exaggerated. But now, no one could find an angle to refute him. No matter how tricky it was, they couldn't find an angle. This guy's premier reputation was too terrifying. In the face of such a reputation, many people were unconvinced and felt uncomfortable. But as Chen Guang said, They didn't go to the cinema, so it was useless to say anything now. Many people felt a faint sense of regret in their hearts. If they had known this would happen, they would have directly applied for the tickets to his premiere as a media reporter. At the beginning, they shouldn't have shown such strong hostility to him, and even deliberately ignored his premiere in order to distance themselves from him. Now, it was too late for regrets. They had missed the breaking point of the news. It was said that people in the same industry were enemies. The other film producers had even more complicated thoughts. They had a strong urge to see with their own eyes what the movie that was praised looked like. But although they were tempted, they were hesitant. The decision to boycott him was the consensus of the entire film industry. If they went to watch his movie, wouldn't it be like providing him with box office? They would be laughed at if the news spread. Wouldn't they be laughed at? What if he really used special means to make others praise him against their will? Wouldn't they become even more of a laughingstock? They were in pain and hesitated. They were extremely tempted by the amazing reputation of the premiere of Women, but they couldn't make up their minds because of various reasons. Until a reporter who went there to buy the tickets for the first public screening rushed back and shouted, "Friends, I want to watch Women. You have to hurry up." Those celebrities who just went out, and even those medical experts, are outside, encouraging people to go to the cinema. It has already caused a sensation. Many people changed their minds at the last minute and decided to watch Women. The first public screening of this lousy movie in the Huaxia Theater is still in a number 14 screening room, and now there are only about 40 tickets left. Well, the person who was hesitating just now turned his head and forgot what he was thinking a second ago. Think again? If he thought again, he wouldn't be able to think anymore. Many big names in the media and other crew members rushed to the ticket counter crazily and almost started fighting. It was all because mobile phone apps were not popular in North America. Otherwise, everyone would be quietly competing for internet speed. Chapter 1077. The Sunshine Man and July in Florence were both about 2.5 hours long, and there were only 10 or 20 minutes left, but William Jones and Ben Affleck could hardly sit still in the cinema. They had already watched the film countless times. During the whole screening process, their attention was not on the screen. Instead, they lowered their heads and played with their phones, watching the limelight on social media. The decline at the premiere was irreversible, but in the hearts of the two strongest Oscar contenders, it was not important at all. They cared more about the reputation and box office performance of Women. Although they didn't take Women seriously before, the sudden change at the premiere left a lingering shadow in the hearts of all the people in the two production teams. Although they did not want to admit it, they were worried that they could not control it. At 8:10 p.m., the first report about the reputation of the premiere of Women finally appeared, which made the eyelids of the two crew members, especially the two male leads, twitch violently. Horrible reviews. How amazing was the premiere of Women? William and Bent unanimously rejected this headline, which was obviously written by someone Chen Guang had paid someone to write. They even refused to provide even one click for it. At 8:13 p.m., the second report appeared. It was from Damon, a well-known reporter from the Washington Post. He had previously been a staunch hater of Chen Guang and had even asked the art director of Sunshine for an interview. He was acquainted with the two crew members. Damon's headline was, "The Ghost Filmmaker from the East? He has utterly conquered John Heenan." The crew members of the two crew members who had come for the Olympic film could not sit still anymore. A small number of them chose to click on it to see what was going on. Both Damon and Heenan were celebrities that could not be ignored. 2 minutes later, the person who clicked on it extracted the content of the article and shared it with the people around him. The atmosphere of panic gradually brewed and spread in the two premiere theaters. At the same time, the third and the fourth more and more reports appeared in the media and social networks. The influence of the premiere of Women, which had already caused a certain amount of popularity, was superimposed. It gradually became a torrent, as if it was going to sweep the entire internet. In the end, William Jones couldn't help but click on an article written by Gay, a reporter from Pan American Entertainment. The title of the article was "The Huaxia Movie Changed Madame Josh Dam." Will Donald Josh Dam be redeemed, or will he be subjected to more brutal violence? This kid named Guy was actually William Jones' high school classmate. The two of them had always been on good terms. Guy also knew where he stood. William Jones couldn't accept the fact that his classmate had started to speak up for Guang. He also had a strong desire to know what his classmate had written. Then he almost jumped out of his chair in shock. It was about the same on Ben Affleck's side. Only a blind person could not see the craziness on the internet. At 8:20 p.m., Sunshine and July were about to play the most important ending of the entire movie, but the huge premiere theater was filled with whispers that couldn't be hidden. The members of the media, sitting in the back for the premiere, couldn't help but whisper to each other, even though they knew it was rude to talk in the cinema. If it weren't for the publicity fees they received from the two film crews, these people would have rushed out. A question mark as tall as the Statue of Liberty appeared in everyone's mind. What kind of movie did the Huaxia man make? What kind of incredible movie gave him the confidence to spout nonsense like that? What made the audience, both celebrities and ordinary people, go crazy? What made Madame Joshtam instantly change, as if she felt the call of the Lord? Our premiere has completely turned into a farce. Listening to the annoying buzzing in the theater, the same thought appeared in William Jones and Ben Affleck's minds. They were angry and helpless. In the end, Donald Joshtam didn't escape. Instead, he took out the heart medicine and placed it on the desk. Then, he pretended to be in extreme pain and waited quietly in the study. That's right, so I won't get beaten up. Although Jenny has a bad temper, she still loves me. Donald comforted himself. At that moment, he was angry, confused, and panicked, but he was also extremely curious and regretful. Damn it, I want to see the Huaxia man's women. If I had known earlier, I would have personally checked the digital source of the movie. Otherwise, I wouldn't be in the dark now. Also, what exactly is written in the book in Jenny's hand? The door creaked, and the heavy footsteps could be heard. It was Jenny coming up the stairs. Donald calmed himself down and silently flipped open the Bible in his hand. He read aloud. In the 4th chapter of Jonah, the Lord said, "Is it reasonable for you to be angry? The Lord is a gracious and merciful God. He does not get angry easily. Even if there is a disagreement, the servants of God should follow God's guidance and use a tolerant and merciful heart to accommodate all opposing opinions, whether it's your family, friends, or even strangers. Only when you are full of love can you have a pure life." Donald, the Bible doesn't contain the nonsense you added at the end. Jenny Joshtan stood in front of the study table and gently placed the first volume of Guang's World Faction on the table. She admitted that she had the intention of twisting Donald's ear before entering the house. However, her old husband had even brought out the gospel of the Lord and filled the table with heart medicine. What else could she say? Mrs. Joshtan, who suddenly understood her husband's pursuit in life, looked at her husband with a rare gentleness and love. Maybe it was because of the illumination of the orange table lamp in the middle of the night, or maybe it was because she was inspired by the gospel of the Bible. Donald felt relieved. "I've passed the dangerous test. Thank God." "Jenny." His voice was slightly trembling. He did not know if it was because he was touched or nervous. Madame Joshtan sighed. "Donald, as you have said yourself, you also need a great and forgiving heart to be tolerant of others. You should really watch Guang's movie. This is his book. I didn't read the content, but I'm sure you'll like it." Mrs. Joshtan pushed the first volume of World Faction, with Guang's handsome face on it, forward slowly. It was placed in front of Donald, right next to the gold-rimmed Bible. Donald keenly noticed that his wife had a religious devotion in her eyes when she looked at the book. What the hell? This is too scary. Did Jenny attend Mass for 2 hours in Theater 14? He opened his mouth to speak, but Mrs. Joshtan had already turned to leave. "Remember not to read it too late. You have to sleep by 2 a.m. at the latest. You can read the rest tomorrow. I think I'll have to prepare 2 sleeping pills for you. I've set the alarm clock. I'll wake up before 2 a.m. If you're not asleep, you're screwed." As the study room door closed, Donald lowered his head to look at World Faction again. All right, it's Guang's face again. This shameless Huaxia man smile was so smug and sinister. Donald looked up at the time. It was almost 10:30 p.m. I wonder how the premieres of Sunshine and July are going. They'll probably be a mess, right? I really shouldn't have left the theater. Now, as the person in charge of the Huaxia Theater, I don't even know anything. Donald blamed himself as he casually flipped open World Faction Performing Arts. Great, I don't have to see that annoying guy's face anymore. I don't believe you can write a useful book. The difference between the Huaxia film industry and the Hollywood film industry is like a 3-year-old standing next to Shaquille O'Neal. World Faction Performing Arts? Are you kidding me? I only know about performance school, experience school, and method school. What the hell is World Faction? Do you want to add another genre to the traditional 3 major performing genres? Do you think you're Van Gogh or Picasso? Can you be any more shameless? Where did you find a ghostwriter? How ignorant must you be to write such a book without any common sense? Donald skipped the title page and went straight to the preface. He still had a mocking look on his face. Although he had received a lot of feedback about women, and even his wife, Jenny, had changed, Donald still didn't think that Chen Guang could come up with a valuable book. Writing an academic book wasn't like telling a story. It had a high requirement for the author. Without years of experience, the book would only make people laugh. Moreover, this was the first time that Chen Guang, a Chinese internet celebrity, got shocked. He didn't know where he got the courage to go straight for the Oscars. As for writing a book on performing arts, it was even more ridiculous. Coupled with the name World Faction Performing Arts, it only proved how ignorant he was about the film industry and performing arts. The ignorant are fearless. You don't understand why the film industry only has 3 specific systems after 100 years of development. With such thoughts in mind, Donald almost burst out laughing when he saw the first line of the preface. Some people might think that my World Faction Performing Arts is the 4th system after the first 3, but you're all wrong. You are all wrong. The Cosmopolitan School is above all performing arts. It is the general principle of the entire performing arts system. In the future, all the classifications of performing arts will be built on the foundation of the Cosmopolitan School, just like Newton's theorem for modern science. Donald almost broke down when he heard that. Chapter 1078. If it weren't for the fact that women's reputation had exploded and that Jenny's words were still ringing in his ears, Donald would have grabbed the book and thrown it out of the window. Crazy. The whole world had gone crazy. If this kind of person had been born hundreds of years ago, he would have been burned alive on the stand. At the Huaxia Theater, the premieres of Sunshine and July were a complete mess. The comments and public opinion on the internet collapsed too. In the eyes of ordinary people, it was just a show and they might be curious about the movie. For the fans of celebrities who were the guests of women today, it might be a carnival. To be able to see so many superstars of the fighting world gathered together, even if it was just a walk on stage, it would be a grand celebration. However, for movie lovers and people in the European and American film and television circles, it was a terrible tragedy and disaster. Donald Jostin's outlook on life and the world had collapsed too. However, the person who started it all, the person who almost turned the Huaxia Theater upside down, Chen Guang, was with Bonner Pierce and the others in a huge standalone villa in the wealthy area of Los Angeles. Now that everything was on track, Chen Guang only needed to finish writing the next volume of World Faction and throw the bomb out on time. He didn't have to worry about anything else. Although it would be a pity to waste an hour or two, since Mr. Pierce had made a promise, Chen Guang had to support him. It wouldn't be difficult to borrow a favor again. He planned to teach the 50 or so elites in the world of fighting, and boxing a lesson in one go. The lesson was simple. All of you come together. I won't use ancient Chinese martial arts. I'll only use my fists and legs and strength. If any of you don't fly into the pool in 5 minutes, I lose. If I sweat a drop, I lose. If anyone can touch me, it's my loss. Everyone, I understand how you feel, but listen to me. If you do it one by one like you want, it'll be meaningless. It'll be a waste of time. It's not that I'm stingy, but I can't describe how I train my skills. Even if I say it, and all of you hear it, you won't be able to learn it. What I possess is a power that completely surpasses the limits of human beings. I'm not talking about Huaxia's inner strength. I'm just talking about muscle strength. You can even think of me as a human from another era, and that's not wrong. But if you want to copy my training method, it's impossible. You'll die for sure. The death rate is 100%. Chen Guang stood by the side of the pool, surrounded by 3 to 5 scantily clad beauties in bikinis. They rubbed themselves against his body, but his expression did not change. He calmly explained to the boxing bosses. In the beginning, when he proposed the class method, these big shots who had helped him a lot today were actually very angry. Everyone felt that his friend was trying to fool them. Chen Guang owed him a favor, so he was exceptionally patient and explained a little more. As he explained, he pinched the stainless steel railing of the swimming pool with 2 fingers and exerted force in a very casual manner. The high-grade stainless steel railing, which was 8 millimeters thick, quickly deformed between his fingers. It was constantly being squeezed, and an ear-piercing and unpleasant crunching sound could be heard. When Chen Guang loosened his fingers, the part of the railing that was about 40 centimeters in diameter that was pinched had completely turned into flat steel. Many people in the arena could twist and bend steel pipes, but to use only 2 fingers to pinch the railing to such an extent without a change in expression was completely beyond everyone's understanding. Are your 2 fingers a hydraulic press? Oh, my God. SH*T. WTF. What a terrifying Huaxia person. What the F***CK is he doing? These superstars, who were used to seeing the world and were also the world's strongest boxing experts, were generally bewildered. What happened next was logical. In less than 3 minutes, Chen Guang turned the huge swimming pool into dumplings. Just as he said, there was not a single drop of sweat, and no one touched the corner of his clothes. Whether it was speed or strength or even dynamic vision and brain reaction speed, Chen Guang was many times stronger than these top powerhouses who were already considered to be the limit of humanity. As for how strong he was, even he himself was not sure. He stood by the pool and looked at the people who were still soaking in the water with a smile. Everyone, what I can teach you for the time being is in the movements I made just now. Mr. Pierce recorded the whole process with a high-speed camera. You can use the high-speed camera to break down each step of my exertion of force. You should be able to clearly see my technique of exertion of force. This will be helpful to you, but as for how much you can understand, it will depend on each person's specific talent. In short, I'm very grateful to everyone for today. Chen Guang's attitude was exceptionally kind. In his opinion, this was an equivalent exchange. What he took out was indeed his trump card. In the past, he had never taught anyone so formally in the past. On one hand, it was because others were not at that level, and they would not be able to master it even if he taught them. On the other hand, such an important skill, of course, could not be easily taught. Many of the big shots in the fighting and boxing world were soaking in the water. Everyone was taught a lesson by Chen Guang, but they were not the least bit unhappy. Their minds were filled with his movements just now. That, Mr. Chen, your training method? Seeing that Chen Guang was about to leave, someone still asked unwillingly. Chen Guang thought to himself and decided to brag. Before you, I also had a real disciple named Shuai Lin. He was a Chinese soldier. Indeed, he went through my special training, and his pure strength increased by 40%, a very standard 40%. I do have a training method that can completely develop potential, but the mortality rate is as high as 90%. Shuai Lin's luck to be able to survive makes me envious, but the mortality rate is too high. I'm not confident, and I do not intend to teach it. If you want to obtain power beyond the limits of humanity, you must first be prepared to die. After that, he did not wait for the others to react and said goodbye to Mr. Pierce. As for the fiery woman's resentful gaze, he completely ignored it. It was not that he was that righteous, but there was still the next volume of World's Faction waiting to be written. The sooner he went back, the sooner he could be at ease. If he was lazy and could not finish it the day after tomorrow, it would be embarrassing. This was a matter of life and death, and he could not be careless. The old man was wise. He could not drop the ball at a critical moment and die because he could not control his crotch. After Chen Guang left, the people in the pool climbed out of the water one after another. Just as they were about to urge Bonner Pierce to organize the high-speed camera, Pierce reminded them, "Friends, you seem to have forgotten something." "What?" Shouldn't you express your views on Mr. Chin's movie on your social media accounts? Everyone suddenly understood. 10 minutes later, except for a certain idiot who forgot to take out his phone when he was fighting and couldn't send a message due to the water on his phone, the 50 or so people updated their Twitter, Instagram, and personal media in one go. They even competed with each other to see who could write more mushy praises. In the end, Big Shio, who looked crude but was actually literary, won by an overwhelming margin. His story went like this. For the first half of my life, I was just an ordinary person. Thank God for the talent I was given, allowing me to appear on the stage of WCW and WWE. On this stage, I obtained glory, wealth, money, and women. But most importantly, it changed me from Paul White to the big Hugh I am today. It is because I'm Biggie Hugh that I was invited by Mr. Pierce to walk into the Hollywood Huaxia Theater's Theater number 14 today and see such an incredible and great movie. I fought for the first half of my life just for this movie tonight. If you are my fans and want to know why I am so fanatical, even more fanatical than I was at WrestleMania, don't hesitate and rush to the theater next to you as fast as you can. Mr. Chun is waiting for you with his women. Everyone agreed with Big Shio's flattering story. His flattery was innovative. It was like listening to thunder in silence. He used simple and seemingly ordinary words to boast to a new height. This flattery was both deep and broad. The key was that his personal reputation and the movie's reputation were completely tied together. It was not as superficial and straightforward as ordinary praise. More than 50 top fighting and boxing superstars updated their social media accounts at the same time, talking about the same thing and praising it crazily in unison. Finally, they called on their fans to go to the theater. What kind of sensation would it cause on social media? At first, fans who had only followed their accounts thought that the most serious case of account theft in history had happened before they could see the latest news. It was not until later that countless fans took the initiative to search for today's news and found out that they really attended the movie premiere together that their doubts were gradually dispelled. Then, because of their idol's call, they developed a strong interest in the movie. It wasn't just these people. The geniuses of America's Dota Tower, the big shots of the global racing and underground drag racing world, world-renowned piano masters, linguists, medical giants, and even 2 Nobel Prize winners all spoke out on this night. Several big shots in the civil aviation industry even had the idea to organize watching the movie in their own companies. They learned from the common practice in Huaxia. The companies paid the bill and forcibly increased the box office, just as Chun Guang stayed up all night writing, "Oh no," writing, "The storm of women was about to sweep the world." At the same time, in Huaxia, 12 time zones away, the real premiere that was even grander than that in Los Angeles finally began. Big Beard Deng led the other main cast members apart from Chun Guang to suppress the scene. The scene could be said to be full of gongs and drums. No one could tell from Big Beard's smiling face how uncertain he was at the moment. Poor Big Beard did not know that Chun Guang had instantly turned the tables in Los Angeles. He was still worried about Chun Guang's one-person premiere in Los Angeles. He was even more worried that the negative comments from the global uproar would affect the box office of women in Huaxia. As for the North American box office, what was that? Was it edible? Did it taste good? Chapter 1079. Jean Shuriwei and Jiang Yage, dressed in luxurious dresses, stood side by side on the red carpet. They skillfully posed in either dignified or lively and lovely poses. For a moment, countless films were wiped out. After the photo shoot, the two of them continued to walk to the stage side by side. Jiang Yage quietly turned her head and whispered, "Chun Guang is so pitiful. We should have gone to Los Angeles to help him." Jean Shuyue's lips moved slightly. "It's useless. Although we are famous in China, we don't have many fans in Europe and America. Even if we go, no one will buy it." Jiang Yage said, "It's all Grandpa's fault. If he didn't refuse, I could have asked Mr. Fong or Mr. Zhou to help him." Jean Shuriwei still shook her head. Although they are famous in Europe and America, they are still Chinese. The problem that Chun Guang is facing now is not that the audience doesn't know him, but that his popularity is almost on par with Bruce Lee. But it's useless. He has been set up as the opposite of the movie. Even if we pull people from China over, it won't change the European and American audience's opinion of him and women. Jiang Yage nodded helplessly. That's right. They will also lose their reputation. Alas, my dear Light, this is a very unconventional course of his. Although we all think that he can win an Oscar with his acting skills, it's too rushed. Jean Shirua pondered for a moment. I think he probably has his own difficulties. No matter what, we must help him stabilize the domestic box office. Although the Oscars don't care about the box office, there are still some benefits. If we can make the domestic box office reach a phenomenal level, it can make up for the loss of the North American box office to a certain extent. Jiang Yage tapped on her phone. Yes, I just posted on Weibo. What did you post? If the box office exceeds 500 million, I will release the highlights of the kissing scene. If it exceeds 1 billion, I will release the highlights of the sex scene. If it exceeds 2 billion, I will release the highlights of the light. If it exceeds 4 billion, I will... Forget it, I haven't written that yet. Are you crazy? We don't have any tidbits at all. All the scenes with him were done in one take. Jiang Yage shrugged. Why don't we just ask Chen Guang to take some shots? You can do that. On the other hand, at 1 o'clock in the morning in Los Angeles, the North American box office data for the premiere of Women was released. The total screening rate was 0. 67%, the occupancy rate was 9.3%, and the total box office earnings were less than $1 million. Extremely low screening rate, extremely low attendance rate. It looked terrible, but it was completely disproportionate to these numbers. What was even more shocking was the extremely high reputation. Although the first public screening at the Huaxia Theater was completely full, it still took time for things to develop. The social media accounts of the famous guests were also a little late. The overall attendance of the first public screening in other cinemas in Los Angeles was still not high. When the data was zoomed into the United States, the average attendance was even lower. Later, the attendance of the evening screening was incredibly higher than that of the first public screening. It was a pity that it was already past midnight, so it was not included in the box office statistics on the day of the premiere. Chen Guang didn't care about what was going on outside the window. The poor employees of the Tianguang Group were heartbroken by the terrible attendance rate. Sitting in the temporary office, Fong Tianyu whined with dark circles under his eyes. There's no reason. Our premiere is so powerful. Even if the first public screening can't be a blockbuster, it should at least be at least 10% of the seats, right? Our screening rate is already low, and the attendance rate is still low. What kind of hatred does our international friends have? Lu Xiaoyang comforted him. Fong, don't worry. Even if we can make a comeback at the premiere, it will take time for the news to spread, right? Even if many people want to change their minds because of the guests, it is already nighttime. Most people won't go out at night just to watch a movie. Let's wait and see. There should be a surprise in the attendance rate tomorrow. We can't do anything about it on the day of the premiere. How can you be so calm, but face? You don't understand, Fong Tianyu. After staying with the boss for a long time, I feel that I have a tendency to be like the boss. Look at my face. Don't you think I have the demeanor of a general now? It's hard to say about the demeanor of a general, but you are really crazy. Screw you. After talking for a while and communicating with Yu Hong in China, they forcibly encouraged Chen Guang's inexplicable confidence. After that, they went back to the hotel and went asleep with their own thoughts. The next morning, the sun rose as usual, and everything looked so ordinary. But no one knew that this would be the most crazy day in the history of movies. When the future generations recalled this day, they couldn't help but tremble with fear. At 9:30 in the morning, the ticket seller of the Huaxia Theater in Hollywood opened the ticket window sleepily as usual. The first screening of the day was at 10 o'clock in the morning, but there were usually few audiences in the morning. Maybe the first movie tickets would be sold at 9:50 in the morning. The ticket seller thought to himself as he raised his eyes and looked forward. Wait, are my eyes playing tricks on me? What's going on? The ticket seller rubbed his eyes to make sure that he wasn't seeing things. Looking out from the window, he saw a long line of people winding through the window all the way to the stairs 20 or 30 meters away. There were obviously people lining up at the bottom of the stairs. The ticket seller stretched his neck and looked down. He actually saw the long line on the square through the stairs. The line was at least 100 meters long, right? Am I dreaming? The poor ticket seller pinched his thigh hard to make sure that he was awake. This kind of queuing situation was not uncommon in the Huaxia Theater, but that was only at night. It was impossible to get in during the day, especially the first screening in the morning. 2 tickets for women, please. Just when the ticket seller was in a daze, the strong man at the front of the line had already shouted, "Okay." The ticket seller didn't expect that his busy work would start so early. Half an hour after the morning screening, the real-time statistics of the North American box office were released. The screening rate of women was still only 67%. As a big new movie, it was hard for people to look at it directly. It was even worse than a roadside picnic. However, the attendance rate of women had completely reversed. It even made people in the European and American film circles fly into a rage and scream horribly. 99.8%, almost 100% attendance rate for the morning screening. What kind of concept was this? This was going against the natural order of things. No, it was already going against the natural order of things. How many years had it been since such an attendance rate had appeared in the history of movies? Even the popular Titanic couldn't achieve this in the primetime slot. After all, many people didn't like to sit in the first row or in the corner, even if they had to wait for the next screening. There's really no need to squeeze everyone in the same theater and push the attendance rate to an insane 99.8%. Although he didn't want to admit it, this was close to a historical 100% attendance rate. But it was still in the morning. In the afternoon and evening, this terrifying figure was very likely to be obtained by him. We were still frantically boycotting this movie yesterday. Today, you made its attendance rate soar to a historical level. How could we accept this? What was this? The biggest irony? The people in the film circle thought of the news report they saw last night, and then thought of Chun Guang's horrible guess who fell from the sky, and felt like crying. They thought that the people in the circle would unite to call on their own fans or fans to boycott him, and that would be enough to make him leave dejectedly. Before his premiere, everything had looked perfect, but in the last 5 minutes, he had turned the tables around. That's right. Everyone thought that those guests were invited by Chun Guang. No one believed that the guests came uninvited. Even if someone told them the truth, they would not be willing to accept it. They would only feel that the world was broken. Sinan, these well-developed idiots, and those who were engaged in academics, did your brains go bad from learning medical language? You idiots, Raven Holland and Pires. You're all world-renowned piano artists, after all. Don't you have any artistic pursuits? Don't you understand how ironic his behavior is? And those racers. Hamilton, don't you have any sense of social responsibility? Do you know what kind of people you're supporting? I heard that there are some esports players who don't do their jobs, and there are idiots who only know how to fly planes. In the words of the Chinese, you are all helping the wicked. On the second day of its screening, women achieved a 180-degree reversal in the number of seats from hell to heaven. It's precisely because you idiots who have no conscience, no standpoint, and no respect for art went against your conscience, dug your eyes out, and spread ignorant comments on the internet that flattered such a lousy film without any bottom line. The influence of the F1 champion, the WRC champion, and the Dakar champion was undoubtedly world-class. The influence of boxing superstars such as Sinan, Verbal Cannon, and Mayweather was also world-class. These people mobilized their fans to support women, coupled with their flattering words that would make people blush, would inevitably make some people who did not usually go to the cinema pay for tickets. There were many people who went to watch the movie, but the screening rate was extremely low. The direct result was, of course, that the attendance rate exploded on the spot. The heavenly Tao reincarnated. Everything had long since been predestined. The audience that provided 9.3% attendance rate for women yesterday was less than 10,000 people. They must have all been paid by the Chinese. There were less than 10,000 people in the audience that attended 9.3% of the seats for women yesterday. All of them must have been paid by the Chinese to be fake reviewers. Or else, how could the so-called ordinary people on the internet who claim to be neutral and just an ordinary audience applaud so uniformly? Rotten Tomatoes, fresh 98. 7%. There were less than 100 votes, and the only negative comment was even a tie. Sorry, my hand slipped, and I clicked the wrong button. What was this? IMDb score of 10 points. Okay, the number of voters was also less than 100. What was this? Just how shameless and deranged a person must be to be able to bribe the internet water army so brazenly. Okay, in short, with your shamelessness and the torrent of yuan, you successfully swindled a terrifying 99.8% attendance rate this morning. But now there were nearly 100,000 people in the audience. We don't believe that your torrent of yuan can still play a role. At noon, when the negative comments started to appear, maybe you could continue to increase the attendance rate in the afternoon, but at the peak hour in the evening, the negative comments would show your true colors. At this point, the people in the European and American film industry could only hope for this. Chapter 1080. At the same time, the box office statistics for the opening day in Huaxia were finally released. The data looked very worrying. In the beginning, Big Beer Deng and everyone else were aiming to reach the top of the premiere, but now it seemed that they had been affected by external factors. The box office on the opening day was more than 30 million yuan, the third place in the country. As a film directed by Deng Xiaojing, it had Jiang Yage, Jin Shiriyue, Rin Chong, Zhou Ye, and Zhao Yueling. More importantly, the super internet celebrity Chen Guang's first electrocution was used as a gimmick. It had been popular in China for half a year, and it had too many hidden advantages over ordinary films in terms of publicity. However, it fell to the third place on the opening day, which was a heavy blow to them. In Europe and the United States, they also paid close attention to the box office of women in Huaxia. After they got the statistics, they finally let out a long sigh of relief and then gloated and wanted to celebrate. You deserve it, you shameful Huaxia people. You deserve it. Even your own countrymen don't like you. In your own words, you are trapped in a cocoon of your own making. At this time, Chen Guang, who was writing in his room, also heard the bad news from Huaxia, but he did not panic. He comforted the four masters with a few words, and then continued to concentrate on writing the monograph. He was so calm that Yu Hong thought that he might have met a fake boss. Because he knew that from now on, the reputation of his film should be like 10 years old wine suddenly opened, and the fragrance should spread 10 miles away. At 12:30 noon, the North American audience who had finished watching the film in the morning began to share their experience on their social media, or in front of their colleagues, classmates, and even neighbors. Even if they were unwilling to say it, others would take the initiative to ask if they knew that they had watched the film. Although there were countless negative rumors about women in North America, and it was almost boycotted by the whole people, the side benefit was that the film had a wide popularity that was completely disproportionate to the box office. Few people watched it, but almost everyone knew about it. This was a strange phenomenon that had not happened in 20 or 30 years. After all, when the box office of other movies completely collapsed, it was mostly because the publicity was not good enough and their popularity did not increase. They were quietly released and then quietly went on a 3-day tour. Even if they died completely, they would not be able to make a comeback. The popularity of women had been boycotted by many big stars in the entertainment circle, but it had become known by everyone. This was also Chen Guang's initial goal. The more people who resisted, the more people would know. It was better to be boycotted than ignored. Everyone was curious. Regardless of whether it was those who had participated in the boycott or those who had been indifferent, they all wanted to know what this movie that had been scolded like. The result was that, at 1 p.m., the movie's reputation had completely achieved the effect of fragrance wafting thousands of miles. It wasn't that there were no people to nitpick, and it wasn't that there were no thorns to nitpick. In the movie, the scenes in which Chen Guang did not participate in were indeed not amazing, and there were even a lot of flaws. But she couldn't resist the fact that her beauty covered all her ugliness, and she couldn't resist the fact that everyone applauded her. If you disagreed, you either had a wrong aesthetic view or your worldview was skewed. When others searched online, they would see that the movie had a Rotten Tomatoes freshness rating of almost 100% and a full score of 10 on IMDb. Even if they really saw the bad parts, in the eyes of the world, the flaws could not obscure the beauty, because no one could really deny the incredible acting skills that Chun Guang had shown in the movie. Even though they knew that it was a scene through the screen, the audience still felt like they were in the scene. It was completely different from the experience of watching a normal movie. When watching Women, even though they knew that there was nothing amazing about the plot, they still could not help but be completely immersed in the whole process of watching the movie. It was as if they had become the male lead, the stubborn retired boxing champion who would never admit defeat. Every time he was happy, the audience would giggle with him unconsciously. When he was angry, the audience would be furious. When he was knocked down in the boxing ring, the audience would also feel the pain in their cheeks. Because of the hasty production and the limitation of the theme and positioning of the movie, although Women used an IMAX screen, it did not provide a 3D source, but an ordinary 2D movie. But even so, the experience that the whole movie brought to the audience was completely above that of a 3D movie. Although the audience was in the theater, their hearts were completely dragged into the movie by Chun Guang's world-class acting skills. It was as if they were standing in the world of the movie, watching the story happen and advance with their own eyes. The audience's mind was completely integrated with the characters in the movie. This was also the reason why many older academic giants and piano masters who had more experience in life looked a little absent-minded when they walked out of the theater. The more understanding and the more knowledgeable people were about life, the deeper they were immersed in the movie, and the deeper their feelings were, the harder it was to get out of the movie when they walked out of the theater. At 1:30 p.m., when the number of ratings on IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes reached 20,000, the rating was still as high as 9, and the freshness was still as high as 99.9%. The media, film critics, and even people in the European and American entertainment circles began to panic. Their curiosity stimulated them crazily. Even in their dreams, they wanted to go in and see what kind of incredible movie this was. But their rationality kept waking them up. This was Chun Guang's conspiracy, a complete scam. If I go into the theater, I will be falling into his trap, and I will provide him with the box office. I can't go. I absolutely can't go by myself. Even if I encourage the people around me to go, I can't go. When Fong Tianyu and Liu Xiaoyang saw such an explosion of praise on the internet, they finally understood why Chun Guang was so crazy and confident. Boston was so awesome. Indeed, he planned to show off in a tent, and when the box office from thousands of miles away, with this attendance rate and this reputation, would those damn theaters dare to not increase the number of showtimes? You're going against the US dollar, against the working people of the democratic country. You guys are triangular heads that block the wheel of history with your arms. You will only be crushed into pieces by the torrent of history. At 3:30 in the afternoon, the attendance data for the first show of the afternoon appeared. 100%. This time it was really full. It was said that some people even asked for aisle seats, but this rude request was sternly rejected by the major theaters for safety reasons. The theaters that had taken the initiative to reduce the number of showtimes for women were also dumbfounded. They felt that the whole world had gone crazy. The word of mouth on the internet was still brewing, and it was even snowballing. More and more people could not resist the forced science or passive seduction of their friends and took the initiative to go to the theater. Some people thought, I don't believe that such a movie exists in this world. I don't believe in heresy. I want to find out the truth, and then severely criticized Charlie. Some people thought, XX has always had a high taste in movies. He said that a good movie would definitely not be bad, and I have to watch it. Some people thought, I have had enough of the praise on the internet. I have to uphold justice. I have to see it with my own eyes, and then I will ruthlessly refute those guys. Some people went to the theater because of the power of their idol. Some went to the theater because of the controversy. Some went to the theater because of the reputation. And some went to the theater because they heard that the protagonist was a boxer. But in short, No matter how strange the reasons were, the final result was that all rivers returned to the sea. Now, the outside of the theater was filled with angry people because they had discovered an extremely embarrassing thing. A movie that had just been released was actually not able to buy tickets. They went to check the number of showtimes on the internet, and only then did they find out that this popular movie actually had a ridiculously low number of showtimes of 67%. This was simply ridiculous. You bunch of D***and min bastards. You have 10 screening halls, but only one screening hall plays this movie every 4 hours? Are you kidding me? You're wasting our lives. Do you want us to queue for 3 hours to wait for it? I want to lodge a complaint against you. This is a crime. We demand that you immediately increase the number of showtimes and apologize to us. Women has just been released, and now so many of us want to watch it, but your theater actually has no showtimes at all? A movie is a movie, and this is politics. We want a movie, not politics. Protest. This was the good thing about the land of the free. If they were unhappy with something, they could protest at any time. The objects of protest could range from Trump's arrogant hairstyle to McDonald's hamburgers becoming smaller. There was nothing in the world that they could not protest against. Now, the unlucky ones were the movie theaters. There were too many people queuing outside, and people with the same demands were gathered together. It was simply a natural hotbed of protest. The theaters that originally had plans to show women were still fine. After an emergency discussion, they immediately distributed the digital source to each screening hall and adjusted the showtimes at the last minute. Only then did they solve the urgent problem. The theaters that had previously cut the showtimes to 0, returned the digital source, or had no plans to show the movie at all were in trouble. They had no choice but to call Tang Zhao's distribution company and request to renegotiate the showtimes. After some internal discussion within the Tianguan group, they asked for Chun Guang's approval. He slapped his thigh and gave a clear answer. I'm sorry, you used to be indifferent to me, but now I'm out of your league. Showtime subsidy? I'm sorry, I don't have a single cent share of the box office. You want us to take 30% of the industry rules? I'm sorry, when you broke the contract, we reevaluated your company's credibility and put you on the list of companies that broke their promises. Now that we want to cooperate again, your share of the box office is only 60%, and we want 40%. I'm sorry, our company invested too much in the initial publicity, but we didn't get the showtimes we expected. Now we need to increase the share to make up for the loss of publicity expenses. That's right, we want 40%. What? Why don't we rob them? All right, it's not wrong if you want to understand it that way. We are indeed robbing. So do you want it? Are you willing to be robbed by us? How could the major movie theaters not be willing? They couldn't, or else they would be torn down. Moreover, when a monetary loss was within an acceptable range, the movie theater companies would talk about justice with the European and American filmmakers. Now, the monetary loss was already immeasurable, and the occupancy rate of other movies was already 100%. We can't talk about justice anymore. This is the time to do business. In addition, now that all the movie theaters in the U.S. were showing women, if we were to offend them, we would offend all the filmmakers. Then I'm sorry, but you still have to rely on us to make a living. Do you have the ability to not show the movie in the U.S.? Of course not. So it doesn't matter if we offend you. When it was past 8 p.m., the showtimes for women officially turned the tables, instantly rising to 36.8%. Chun Guang had accidentally created another historical record, the strongest rescheduling rate in history. After one day of screening, it went from 67% to 36.8%, an increase of as much as 55 times. What was even more shocking was that even though the showtimes were already at the level of the top A-list blockbusters, the occupancy rate was still maintained at a crazy 90% and above. On this evening, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that everyone turned out for this movie. Chapter 1081. Fong Tianyu and Liu Xiaoyang hugged each other tightly in the office, almost crying tears of joy. Damn, it feels so good to act cool with the boss. We actually managed such a godly film. We really reached the peak of life by lying down. It seems that it won't take long for us to be promoted, get a raise, become general managers, become CEOs, marry beautiful women, and reach the peak of life. I'm a little excited just thinking about it. Wait, now that we're the senior managers of a company with a market value of tens of billions, ordinary CEOs really can't catch up to us? Then the problem is, where are our beautiful women? Damn, they've all been picked up by President Chun. Forget it, no matter what. With everyone's cooperation on the second day of the film's release, it can be said that we've hit the bottom and made a comeback all over the world. Congratulations. All right, come to think of it, it seems that we haven't actually done anything. We've been working together without doing anything. The two of them thought about it carefully. Indeed, it was the most frightening thing when the atmosphere suddenly became quiet. After the crazy investment in advertising in the early stages, although there was still nearly $20 million left in the budget for the Olympic Games, that was all for the PY deals with the judges after the release of the film, as well as for the obvious online vote solicitation. The budget for the film's box office and reputation had all been spent, the contracts had been signed, and the supporting publicity plans were all in hand. The only thing left was to push forward step by step throughout the film's release cycle. So, in fact, today's fourfold counterattack in terms of attendance, scheduling, box office, and reputation seemed to have nothing to do with them at all. It was all the miracle brought about by the boss's godly acting skills in the film. The boss is indeed the boss. He's right, a film is a film. The only thing that could really determine the final height of a film was the artistic value and standards shown in the film. These things were all-encompassing. The plot, narrative rhythm, and shooting effect of the film were one aspect, but the acting skills of the actors were another. As long as it could bring the audience a pleasant and unforgettable viewing experience, whether it was an artistic film or a commercial blockbuster, as long as it could make the audience feel intoxicated and memorable, it was a good film. Women was lagging behind in all other aspects, but with the boss's acting skills, he managed to pull it all back. As long as he was there, the audience didn't need special effects, didn't even care about the story, and could even tolerate English subtitles with Chinese pronunciation. He could even tolerate the scenes that he had shot before he joined the crew, muddling through. In the face of such a boss, other than kneeling down, we can only ask for a bonus, right? On the other hand, in China, after the collapse on the opening day, the real evaluation of the movie took a night to brew. The next morning, especially after 8 o'clock, the real quality of the movie was gradually revealed. Gold will always shine. What's more, the reputation of women had exploded in North America, and it had even traveled overseas to support China. Those who followed the trend of boycotting women yesterday, after one night, found that their boycotting had become stupid actions of worshiping foreign things. They were laughed at by the people around them. You don't support your own countrymen, and when the foreigners scold you, you believe them and start boycotting Chinese movies. Why don't you go wag your tail at your daddy rice? It's a pity that others don't like you. It's a pity that even your American daddy is praising heroin. So the question is, as a Rice Party member, what should you do now? Do you want to hang yourself? Or do you want me to hang you? Or do you want to go to the cinema and buy a ticket, then come out and write a review of more than 1,000 words? Facing this situation, the people who boycotted women and made it to the third place in the domestic box office on the opening day could only express their embarrassment. Damn it, the Hollywood bigwigs are not helping us. We boycotted Chunguang in China to support you. Now that your backyard is on fire, how can we cooperate with the Taijun? Oh, no, cooperate with our international friends to carry out work? XX, I don't want to criticize you, but write a review and come to my office tomorrow. I've seen your Weibo. Although we are not a state-owned enterprise, we are still under the red flag. There is something wrong with your awareness. XX, let's break up. You are a shameful Rice Party member. I look down on you. XX, people of different principles cannot make plans together. From now on, we are no longer friends. You walk your financial path, and I will cross the social bridge. XX, hurry up and buy 2 tickets for me and my wife. You pay the bill. We can still be friends. In China, there were all kinds of scenes like this. The good young people who hated Chen Guang had suffered the most painful blow in history. Whether it was financially or mentally, it could be said to be a double blow. What was worse was that the stubborn young people suffered a third, more tragic blow. I have no choice. I can't control my Qilin arm when facing people like you who have lost your mind. What? You mean medical expenses? That's impossible. Outside, the sound of gongs and drums could be heard. However, the initiator of all this, Chen Guang, was still writing in the hotel with a calm face. There was no way. The old man's world-class acting skills were given by the heavenly Holy Grail. It was impossible for him not to be so good. I want to be weaker, but I can't do it. While he was showing off, his phone rang. He picked it up and saw that it was Zhuo Jingxi. Chen Guang was a little puzzled. It was 9 o'clock in the morning in China. Is teacher Zhuo calling to congratulate me on my upcoming great success? He happily picked up the phone, but after only a few words, his mood turned from sunny to gloomy. He felt a slight pain in the ass. About 15 minutes later, Chen Guang rubbed his eyebrows and hung up the phone. Zhuo Jingxi did not know about him and women at all. Instead, she threw 2 pieces of bad news to Chen Guang. For the past few days, Zhuo Jingxi had been in Gokyo University's photocatalyst laboratory trying to synthesize the 5 God-level formulas. She tried to use the existing resources of Gokyo University to synthesize the 5 God-level formulas. However, after several consecutive days of feasibility verification, Zhuo Jingxi sadly discovered that according to the existing conditions of Gokyo University's photocatalyst laboratory, even if all the strong resources of several other research institutes in China that were engaged in related research were integrated, there was still a huge gap in equipment and a serious lack of raw materials. In short, Zhuo Jingxi concluded that even if domestic scientific research progressed by leaps and bounds, it was impossible to synthesize the 5 God-level formulas in at least 1 to 2 years. Another piece of bad news was already within Chen Guang's expectations. Prince, whose laboratory results had been stolen, would not turn a blind eye to Zhuo Jingxi. 2 days after she settled down at Gokyo University, Prince's lawyer's letter followed. Prince's laboratory formally filed a lawsuit, accusing Zhuo Jingxi of stealing laboratory property, suspected of espionage, stealing trade secrets, and many other crimes. In fact, similar things have been common in recent years. Almost every time a Chinese executive from a foreign research institute returned to China, they would often bring a pile of lawsuits with them. However, the Chinese executives usually turn a blind eye to this, putting on an attitude of, "You can sue me, I'll pretend I didn't see anything." Did you really think that we sent out Chinese talents to work for you for free? Didn't we want these high-end talents to bring back important technology? When these people returned to China, we couldn't wait to treat them like treasures, and you still want to sue me? You can sue me all you want, and I'll admit defeat. Of course, these high-level confrontations can't be resolved simply by slamming the table and acting shamelessly. We won't blatantly shield you. We respect the demands of your country's companies and intellectual property rights more. However, lawsuits involving intellectual property rights are always protracted battles. As for us, let's just drag it out for the time being. However, the situation was a little different this time. Prince had found a strong ally in China, led by a local tyrant. With the help of Tiansong Water Group, this lawsuit, which would have been downplayed or even completely ignored, inexplicably caused an earthquake in the domestic science and technology circle. In just 2 or 3 days, almost everyone in the domestic scientific research circle knew about this. There were many overt and covert statements and rumors. Even administrative agencies like Wujing University and the Science and Technology Department of Sichuan Province felt tremendous pressure. Prince's lawsuit could cause such a sensational effect, all because of the agreement reached with Tiansong Water Group after they reached an agreement with it. Tiansong Water Group almost became Prince's spokesperson in China, mobilizing all kinds of relationships, and, at the same time, putting pressure on Xiaoguang Environmental Protection, Tangshan Industrial Wastewater Treatment Plant, Gokyo University, and the domestic science and technology community. The main purpose was also simple: Song Ningyuan felt that he had seen through Chen Guang's trump card and believed that Chen Guang dared to continue to operate Tangshan industrial plant because of the photocatalyst technology brought back by Zhuo Jingxi from the United States. He made such a huge noise, but he did not really intend to send Zhuo Jingxi to court because of this matter. His main purpose was nothing more than to shock the tiger and strangle the possibility of Chen Guang using Prince's photocatalyst technology in Tangshan industrial plant in advance. The strength of Prince's international monopoly laboratory and Tianshan Water Group, the leading enterprise in China, could not be underestimated. For a time, Gokyo University faced tremendous pressure and was accused of harboring. This pressure came from the academic community, the business community, and a considerable degree of political power. On the other hand, the school was indecisive due to the incident of Chen Guang overthrowing Su Lijing in a fit of rage for Zhuo Jingxi. It was definitely not possible to hand Zhuo Jingxi over like this. God knew if Chen Guang would do what he did to Su Lijing again. Although no one was as dark as Su Lijing, who didn't have some shameful things in life, who hadn't been young and ignorant. What's more, the current Chen Guang was no longer what he used to be. With a wave of his hand, a privileged organization would investigate you thoroughly. God knew how big an earthquake would happen if he was provoked. So things were temporarily dragged on like this. People and forces from all sides were having headaches, but there was nothing they could do. Chapter 1082. On Zhuo Jingxi's side, she thought that since she could not achieve her goal in school, continuing to stay in the laboratory would only bring trouble to Professor Xu. She simply left the school for the time being and ran to her rented house outside the school in a daze. Hua Ling and Zhongyu also did not want to go to other people's experimental groups. With Professor Xu's tacit approval, they temporarily put aside their work in the school's laboratory and remained as nominal graduate students. The matter of converting the 5 God-tier formulas from formulas into finished products had to be completely put on hold because of this. However, wanting her to return to the United States to plead guilty and compensate was also a pipe dream. Prince was also well aware of this. America did not have the ability to extradite such high-level talents from China. The fundamental purpose of Prince's lawsuit was nothing more than a show of force to prevent Zhuo Jingxi from completing the transformation of the results in China and turning Prince's patent into something that belonged to China. Let's not talk about international relations, but the concept of intellectual property protection must be respected. Prince's original purpose was only to force Zhuo Jingxi out of China's domestic scientific research institutions. That was all. Of course, no matter what the final result was, whether it was left unsettled or Zhuo Jingxi compensated for the losses, Zhuo Jingxi's global academic career should basically come to an end. From now on, unless China's domestic scientific research institutions quietly accepted her, she would no longer have any place in the world, especially in the field of photocatalysis. In addition, even if she could produce second-class scientific research results in China's domestic scientific research institutions, she would not have any qualifications to sign her name, let alone obtain fame and fortune. Otherwise, once the results with her name were taken to the world, it would be impossible to obtain any recognition and support. When she chose to leave the United States with Prince's samples, this outcome was destined. Originally, Prince had thought that this would be a long and drawn-out battle. He did not expect that he would be able to get the help of a major corporation in Huaxia. Zhuo Jingxi herself seemed to be exceptionally decisive. When she saw that the situation was not good, she immediately withdrew. Prince's goal was basically achieved, and Tianshan Water was even more satisfied. Song Ningyuan felt that he had completely cut off Chen Guang's escape route. No matter what he did now, after 4 months, if he could not get the support of the new photocatalyst technology, Chen Guang would know that he had no choice but to accept Song Ningyuan's offer. Letting go was the only way out. Chen Guang couldn't come up with any good ideas for the situation in the country. He sighed. Forget it. If it's too late, then so be it. Teacher Zhuo, you don't have to blame yourself. It's not your fault. If the domestic conditions can't be met, we don't have to force it. Hearing this, Zhuo Jingxi still blamed herself. She felt that she had failed to live up to Chen Guang's expectations. She sighed and did not reply. Chen Guang heard her disappointment and comforted her. Don't worry, there's still a long way to go. How about this, from now on, you prepare your own laboratory. Even if it takes more time, we can slowly spend money to buy equipment and people. From now on, we can start preparing our own laboratory. This will save you from disputes over intellectual property rights when you use the school's laboratory to produce results. Zhuo Jingxi's eyes lit up, but she quickly sighed. But this will cost a lot of money, right? Besides, it definitely won't make it in time for the Tangshan factory. Chen Guang said carelessly, Don't worry, money is not a problem. You haven't seen the recent news, right? There's no harm in telling you. I'm going to make a fortune soon. Let's not talk about an investment of 1 or 200 million US dollars. Let's take it slow. We can even spend 1 billion. The 5 major formulas represent a market of hundreds of billions of US dollars. As long as we can produce results, any investment is worth it. As for the Tangshan factory, if it's gone, then so be it. It's less than 200 million. We can afford to lose it. Chen Guang silently calculated the North American box office that women might get. Based on the current situation, he was really confident. In 5 hours at the latest, he would be able to see the box office statistics for the second day of release. Without 20 to 30 million US dollars, he would be letting down his 33.8% screening rate and more than 90% attendance rate. After deducting the theater division's share, the initial 40 million US dollars of advertising budget would be fully recovered in 5 days at the latest. All that was left was profit. North American movies could be released for up to 3 months. Women had a chance of hitting $1 billion US dollars at the box office. By then, his Tianguan group would have more than 300 million US dollars. It was just enough to cover the cost of building a prince-level laboratory that Zhuo Jingxi had previously estimated. This was not even considering the domestic box office profits. This meant that he didn't need to look for financing at all. He could easily build a laboratory that belonged to Zhuo Jingxi and himself. As for the share of the distribution company that Tang Xiao opened, sorry, no. Sometimes I'm a miser too. Okay, since you think so, I won't say anything else. Zhuo Jingxi was still a little unwilling, but she didn't insist on it. She chatted with Chen Guang for a bit more and hung up. Chen Guang also calmed himself down and continued to write. At 1 o'clock in the morning, the North American box office statistics for the second day of release were released. It was a terrifying number that could be described as historical. Only then did Chen Guang realize that he had underestimated the explosive power of the North American box office. He had only estimated the situation of women based on the box office statistics of other people, but he had forgotten a very important problem. In the past, although the box office champion of the day also had a screening rate of over 30%, the attendance rate usually didn't exceed 60%. However, today's heroine only had a screening rate of 33.8% at night, but it still had an attendance rate of over 90%. With just these 2 peak screenings at night, women had completed a magnificent turnaround and successfully achieved a perfect counterattack on the second day of release, reaching the top in one fell swoop. Chen Guang took a deep breath and felt refreshed. Since the box office had reached the top, the second and third volumes of World School of Performing Arts would be officially released tomorrow. It would officially be the first shot that he had made at the Olympic Games. Ever since he came to Los Angeles, the old man had been low-key for too long. It was said that a kind person would be bullied, and a kind horse would be ridden. The old man was in a foreign country, and based on the principle of being kind to others, he didn't fight back even when he was scolded. Did you think that he was easy to bully? You guess what I was thinking, so you started to cause all kind of trouble. Yes, my actions were Sima Zhao's intention, and everyone knew it, but I didn't say it out loud, did I? Did I eat your rice? You messed with me on the screening schedule, messed with me on the premiere guest, even called on your fans and audience to boycott me. Did you really think that I was a sick cat if I didn't show my power? Damn it. It's time to show my real skills and let you see how I aim for the Oscars. Tomorrow, I will openly tell all of you that I, Chen Guang, am indeed aiming for the Oscars. I'm going to open the next era of the performing arts. Are you not convinced? Continue to boycott me? Can you boycott me? You are just ants in front of the wheel of history. Chen Guang reverted to his old ways and muttered all kinds of things in his heart. In fact, he had completely forgotten one thing. Although he did not openly admit that he was aiming for the Oscars, he really did not have the ability to be low-key. Finally, at 11:30 a.m. on the third day of the screening, Chen Guang let out a long sigh of relief and threw the keyboard away. After 48 hours of fighting without rest, he finally finished the second volume of World School. He waved his hand and called Lu Xiaoyang and Fong Tianyu over. He threw the USB flash drive containing the script to them and said, "Get to work, guys." At 1 p.m., the box office of the second day of screening in China was released. Women finally made a comeback and reached the top, with a box office of 80 million renminbi. At the same time, the box office statistics for the morning screening in North America were released. The screening rate increased again, reaching 41.2%, and the occupancy rate was still as high as 91.5%. At 3 p.m., the freshly printed first volume and the second volume of World School were out from nearly 100 large printing houses in nearly 50 cities in America and sent to countless newsstands, bookstores, and Amazon's warehouses. Originally, Chen Guang wanted to provide the electronic version for free, but he was stopped by Fong Tianyu in the end. At that time, Fong Tianyu said, "Boss, don't be anxious. There are still 3 months until the Oscars. Just sell the book. People want to read it will be there sooner or later. You don't have to shoot yourself in the foot. You can't go against money." Chen Guang agreed. Now that the box office had turned the tide and there were still 3 months to build up the reputation, there was really no need to burn money. All right, it's decided. How many copies did you print? 500,000 copies. Okay, that's settled then. Tell the printing houses to prepare more copies. I personally think that the total sales in North America can reach 5 million copies. What about in China? Only 100,000 copies. Boss, you know that piracy in China is a bit of a problem, especially on the internet. Chen Guang waved his hand. You worry too much, Fong Tianyu. This is called a reference book, but I write it in a simple way, suitable for all ages. It's a reference book that everyone can read. Acting skills are not only useful for actors, but they're also useful in real life. In addition, you have to consider my popularity in China. I'm afraid my fans will buy more than 1 million copies. Of course, just considering the fan economy is still a small group. What I really need is a wider audience. Also, what others read on their phones and computers are the kind of boring online novels that I read all day long. A famous book like World School needs to be chewed on slowly and carefully. You even need to take notes while reading. If you don't buy a paper copy and hold it in your hand, you won't be able to read it. When Chen Guang said this, his face exuded the brilliance of a great man. Fong Tianyu didn't even notice that he had become a Fong Tianyu. Our boss has become a cultured man. Then, boss, how many copies should we print in China? Chen Guang waved his hand. 10 million copies for the first print. Damn, boss, do you have to be so arrogant? Chen Guang flipped his hair. I can't help it. I'm born to be arrogant. You go ahead with your work. I'm going to take a walk. There's nothing for me to do for now. Let me tell you, 10 million copies is just a small target. Well, forget it. It's too arrogant to call the first print of 10 million copies a small target. Let's call it a medium target. Let's go. After saying that, he turned around and left the temporary office of the Tianguang Group with his head held high. Now he felt very secure and couldn't find any reason to fail. A few minutes after Chen Guang left, Lu Xiaoyang came in from outside. Fong Tianyu pulled him over. Lu Xiaoyang, boss just said that we need to print 10 million copies in China. I feel like it's a failure. Lu Xiaoyang rolled his eyes at him. Think about your past. Think about our past. Did the boss make any mistakes in his decisions? Why is your Fong Tianyu still unwilling to be enlightened? Poor Fong Tianyu was laughed at by Lu Xiaoyang again. He muttered to himself as he went back to his office and made a call to China. After hanging up, he looked at the electronic version of Chen Guang's manuscript in front of him and murmured to himself, Can we really sell 10 million copies of the English version in China? We deserve it. Chapter 1083. That night, as the global box office of women started to heat up, Chen Guang's blockbuster monograph, World School of Performing Arts, shocking, 7 billion, was finally released into 2 volumes. Actually, many people had always thought that Chen Guang was bragging when he said he wanted to write a book. A person who had his first electrocution said he wanted to write a monograph on performing arts and teach others how to act. This was even more ridiculous than him wanting to win an Oscar. However, it had been 2 days since the movie was released. Although most people in the film industry still refused to enter the cinema, there was no doubt that even a blind person could not ignore the phenomenal reputation of women. Even so, many people still thought that Chen Guang was joking when he said he wanted to write a book. Even though there were rumors that he had given away 150 copies of the so-called first volume on the day of the premiere, and that the cover of the first volume had been shown many times on major media and television, many people still chose to ignore it. Not many people thought about digging deeper into the true meaning of the 150 copies that he had given away. They had no choice but to ignore it. This guy's cover was too glaring, and they were afraid that they would be blinded. However, there were a few local reporters and media people in Los Angeles who got their hands on the first volume and were ready to write something about it. However, until today, they still did not do anything, and it was puzzling. Among these people was Donald Joshdan, the most staunch and earliest anti-Chen Guang activist, and the first veteran filmmaker to publicly call for a boycott of Chen Guang in the United States. At that time, many people heard Madame Joshdan's statement and expressed their deepest sympathy for Donald's experience. It had been 2 days since the incident, and Donald, who usually appeared at the Huaxia Theater every day, had unexpectedly disappeared. His friends in the industry called him to see if he had been subjected to Madame Joshdan's domestic violence. He appeared to be in a good state of mind over the phone, and he was very excited. However, he was unwilling to tell others what he was doing. Only then did the people in the film industry feel relieved. Otherwise, they would really be worried that Madame Joshdan had been bewitched by the Easterners and would harm Donald when she returned. Old Donald had already met with misfortune. Due to various reasons, the volume that Chen Guang sent out in advance did not cause too much of stir. In a sense, it had something to do with the huge face on the cover of the volume. But now the first and second volumes of his book had finally appeared in front of everyone as an official publication. The filmmaker could not help but feel very conflicted. To buy or not to buy, that was the question. If he bought it, although the price was not expensive, it would still mean that he had submitted to Chen Guang, and he would lose face. In addition, although it would not increase the box office of his movie or the sales of his so-called monograph, it would also be a betrayal of his integrity as a filmmaker. He didn't want to buy it, but he was curious about what kind of book it was. If he didn't take a look first, he wouldn't be able to find fault with him, and he wouldn't be able to refute and ridicule him with reason. These people in the European and American film circles hesitated again and again. Most of them finally decided to continue to wait and see. No matter what, they would scold him first. This was Los Angeles. This was the commanding heights of modern industry, Hollywood. They could not allow a Chinese person to behave atrociously here. Even if your movie was really as good as it was boasted to be on the internet, you would not be recognized by the mainstream. Didn't you want an Oscar? Didn't you want fame and fortune? Dream on. Even if those stupid fighting fanatics really brought you crazy box office, you would not be able to get real fame. Without mainstream recognition, you would not be able to get an Oscar. We're the ones who vote, not those ordinary audiences who don't know anything. With these thoughts in mind, the target of the boycott in the European and American film circles was further expanded, extending from Chen Guang's movie to his book. Unfortunately, it was of no use. Thanks to the good reputation of women, the sales of World's Faction were doing well. That night, in major first-tier cities, especially in bookstores and newsstands near the city cinemas, when the posters of the new book had just been put up and the goods had just been distributed, consumers flocked to buy it. In addition, the big gift package that was tied to the movie ticket, together with the ticket and the book, was only $29. $9, which was 25% cheaper than buying the book alone. It caused a frenzy of buying. Basically, the number of tickets sold in major cinemas was the same. The first batch of 200,000 copies was sold out that very night. Additional orders for the movie version flew to Tang Xiaokai's publishing and distribution company. This scene was like a new volume of Harry Potter on the shelves. At 1 o'clock in the morning, the North American box office on the third day of release was released. It was a jaw-dropping $40 million. Not only did it reach the top, but it also set a new record for a single day's box office in recent years. In fact, as early as the second day, the box office brought by the fan effect caused by the premiere guests had basically been exhausted. There was only one fundamental reason why the movie could still perform so well on the third day: the quality of the movie itself. Just as Chen Guang said to others in the beginning, when the standard of the movie was strong enough to crush all negative comments and boycotts, to surpass the barriers of subtitles and skin color, and to crush the cultural barriers between Huaxia and Europe and America, all the stumbling blocks in front of the movie would be useless and nothing to fear. What's more, the positive publicity that Tianguang Group put out to the public had never stopped. Whether you believe it or not, I first boasted until I believed it myself. It could be roughly calculated that 2 days before the movie was released, the positive publicity that Tianguang Group spread on the internet at their own expense accounted for less than 5%. The rest were all kinds of negative information and boycotts. After the explosive premiere, with the help of the many big-name guests, the positive publicity rose to 10% before the premiere ended. After the premiere, during the broadcast time of the first public screening, due to the live interviews that took place at the Huaxia Theater at the end of the premiere, as well as the influence of the impressions written by these big-name guests on their respective social media, the proportion of positive publicity further increased, reaching 15%. Later, as more and more people walked out of the cinema on the second day, almost all of them praised the movie. There were even more good reviews on IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes. One after another, pertinent reviews from ordinary audiences spread. Now, the positive publicity about women on the internet had almost reached more than 40%, and it was still expanding at a faster and faster pace. In just 3 days, Chen Guang even became a celebrity in the United States. Because of the cultural differences between Europe and America and Huaxia, his appearance was even more widely spread here. He was recognized from time to time when he walked on the street. Maybe it was a warm greeting, or maybe it was a disdainful look, and they would spit something next to them. But there were also disadvantages to this. He had finally stolen half a day of leisure and wanted to talk about life with a German girl, but he had no choice but to retreat. Damn it, I'm so angry, but I can't do anything bad. What made him even angrier was that Tang Ying, who was in charge of everything, actually flew back to China on the day of the premiere. Where's the jean collection? I've already taken off my pants, but you ran away first? I've only been busy for 2 days. Can't you wait for me for a while? Chen Guang felt so suffocated that he couldn't breathe. The next morning, Chen Guang went out with his head held high after a good night's sleep. He didn't need to care about the box office anymore. He raised his hand and looked at the time. It was December 28th. It was time to officially announce his plan for the Olympic Games. It's not popular to hide things like in China when doing things in Europe and America. I want to win an Oscar, so I have to be honest with them. I want the audience, the filmmakers, and the film critics to have a good first impression of the film. I want them to treat women as a film aimed at the Olympic Games from the very beginning, so that when they watch the movie, they can evaluate what women is relying on and how likely it is. The more the audience thinks about it, the easier it is for them to see it clearly, and the easier it is for them to fall into their own trap. It doesn't matter whether their motives are nitpicking or flattering, whether it has the potential for the Olympic Games or not. The first impression is very important. If you pretend to hide it first, and then suddenly tell others when it's time to be nominated, others will think that you're joking. At that time, the Oscar judges will already have a fixed list of nominees, and you won't even be on it. What do you expect others to do? Change their minds at the last minute? Besides, if you say it now, it'll be easier for Chen Guang to do more detailed public relations. Women was officially held at the Huaxia Theater in Hollywood at 10 o'clock in the morning. If it was a movie in the past, the press conference would have been held a week or two earlier. However, women being screened in North America was Chen Guang's idea to begin with, and there were all sorts of things that happened, so the order was reversed. Also, when many media reporters received the invitation yesterday, their first reaction was that they thought they had seen it wrong. The press conference is actually held at the Huaxia Theater. It doesn't make sense. Donald Joshdan is the #1 hater of women in North America. I heard that he regretted agreeing to hold the premiere of Women at the Huaxia Theater. There's no reason for him to agree to hold the press conference at the Huaxia Theater, right? Did Mrs. Joshton's domestic violence escalate? Poor Donald. Otherwise, let's not care about women anymore. There are too many people trying to take advantage of this hot topic. Let's focus on another hot topic. For example, North American movie celebrity Joshdan family's tragedy. Shocking. Celebrities can also be subjected to domestic violence. Is that so? In fact, even Chen Guang was puzzled about this. He asked Lu Xiaoyang backstage, "But Face, how did you do it?" What did Donald say? Chen Guang had a deep impression of that stubborn old man. Lu Xiaoyang had a blank look on his face. I don't know either. Yesterday, our first choice wasn't the Huaxia Theater, but the Flemington Hotel. However, it was obvious that the Huaxia Theater was more suitable. I just wanted to give it a try and asked Mr. Tang for Donald's number. In the end, when I made the request, he agreed immediately and even gave us the largest conference hall. Boss, look, it's this Hugo Hall. Chen Guang was puzzled. How henpecked is Donald? Do foreigners also have bronchitis? What about the fee? Chen Guang asked. Lu Xiaoyang was even more confused. Free. Alas, Donald is so pitiful. Chen Guang let out a long sigh. He suddenly felt that this old guy was not so annoying. He was also a man with a story. Why don't we hire a psychiatrist for him? I think it would be better if you talked to Mrs. Joshdan personally. Let Mrs. Joshdan change Donald's outlook on life in a more comprehensive way. But Face suggested maliciously. He thought that Chen Guang was going to hit him when he was down. Chen Guang nodded. That's fine. Help me find out where the community service station that Mrs. Joshdan frequents is. I'll go there after the press conference. Lu Xiaoyang took a deep breath and mourned for Donald for 3 seconds. His execution was just right, and he was able to do it right away. The boss is really cruel. He is worse than a beast. I can't afford to offend him. But Face, why are you looking at me like that? Boss, I think you have become more handsome after your hair grew back. I'm almost fascinated by you. Get lost. Boss, it's time for you to go on stage. Chapter 1084. As Chen Guang walked from the backstage of Hugo Hall to the front of the stage, the camera flashes went off nonstop. Beams of light shone directly into Chen Guang's eyes. Old Master Guang used his internal energy to protect his eyes. As he walked, he only smiled and opened his eyes, looking especially elegant. He had to make sure that every photo taken of him was a handsome man with no blind spots. He didn't want to be photographed flirting and be ridiculed online. After the reporters were done taking photos, Chen Guang pressed his hands together and gestured to the huge pile of microphones in front of him, asking everyone to be quiet. There were some familiar faces that Chen Guang had seen at the premiere or in the aisle of the Huaxia Theater after the premiere. However, Chen Guang wasn't in the mood to be interviewed by these people back then because he knew that nothing good would come out of their mouths. Everyone, let's skip the pleasantries. We'll start asking questions from the first person in the first row from the left. You can ask me all your questions about women, including why I decided to release it in the US and the guests at the premiere. I will answer all your questions except for my personal life. As soon as Chen Guang finished speaking, the guy in the first row from the left stood up. Hello, Mr. Chen. I'm Damon from the Washington Post. There have always been rumors that you're here for the Oscar. May I ask if that's true? We would like to hear a more specific answer from you. Chen Guang grinned. Good question. Thank you, Mr. Damon, for asking this question. That's right. I'll answer everyone clearly now. I, Chen Guang, am indeed here for the Oscar for Best Actor. There was a brief uproar among the reporters. Everyone had different expressions on their faces. Some thought it was natural, while others were in disbelief. Immediately, the second person asked, "Mr. Chun, I'm Talent from the New York Times. May I ask, Mr. Chun, what do you think makes you worthy of the Oscar for Best Actor?" This was obviously a nitpicky guy. Chen Guang's expression didn't change. "You must be like the reporters I've met before. You've never been to a movie theater, so you don't know what I'm talking about. So how do you want me to answer you now?" Next, this pitiful reporter from the New York Times initially thought that he would be respected since he's from a reputable media company, so his words were a little arrogant. However, he never expected that Chen Guang would be even more arrogant, putting him on the spot. The third reporter stood up. "Mr. Chun, I'm Merlin from the Manhattan Weekly. I watched Women in the movie theater last night. I think that your acting skills are indeed epical, but whether a movie can win the Oscar or not doesn't depend on your performance alone. It has to do with the movie as well." Of a movie. In Women in the movie, other than your acting skills, Mr. Chun, there are many things that needs of the movie. So I'd like to know where your confidence comes from. Are you being overconfident? Chen Guang nodded. This guy's words were much more pleasant to hear. First, he acknowledged me, then he questioned me. This was a friend who understood the ways of the world. "Mr. Merlin, I don't deny that the problem you mentioned does exist. But before I left Huaxia, I said something to my employees. After all, the Oscar is for the filmmakers, not the politicians. Let's not talk about the seemingly neutral political tendency in the plot of Women. It's just a movie that tells a story. Let's refocus on the fundamental art of the movie. Let's put aside the weak points of Women and focus on my personal acting skills. My confidence comes from my acting skills. There is no other reason." After finishing his words, Chen Guang continued to look at the audience with a smile. His face was filled with calmness, but in fact, it was extremely pretentious. How could he say such a thing? This wasn't a private occasion. It was an official press conference with hundreds of reporters. Did your family know that you were so arrogant? Weren't you afraid of being beaten? Countless flashes appeared again. Countless reporters thought to themselves, "We must record the most shameless man in the world. Maybe he will drown in his own saliva tomorrow." The fourth questioner followed up Merlin's question and continued, "Mr. Chun, I've also watched Women. I admit that your acting skills are very good, but I don't think they are good enough for you to be on the podium of the Oscar." Chen Guang answered again, "That's because you've denied me from the beginning. You've been prejudiced by the first impression. I suggest you watch the movie again. Focus all your points of view on the scenes where I'm involved in. I can tell you responsibly that you will have a new feeling. In addition, please look at the book in my hand. This is the first and second volume of World School of Performing Arts, which just went on sale yesterday. It's only $39.9 US and is now out of stock. If you watch the movie with the comprehensive interpretation of my acting skills in this book, you will have a different feeling. I'll say something shameless again. Many of you people in and out of the industry don't really understand my performing arts. You don't really understand it, but it doesn't matter. You read my book first and then watch my movie. The parts that you don't understand will gradually become clear. You'll find that my acting skills are like the paintings of Van Gogh and Da Vinci. At first glance, they are ordinary, but when you think about them carefully, you will find that they are full of mysteries. I can even say that the acting skills I displayed in Women and the brand new performing arts system I wrote in World Faction, once mastered by the world, will definitely bring the current human film industry one step further and reach the next level. Let me emphasize again, the Oscar is the Oscar for filmmakers. What I will bring to this industry will be revolutionary progress. So why am I not worthy of the Oscar Best Actor? As soon as Chen Guang said this, the whole Hugo Hall was silent. The reporters couldn't calm down for a long time. Some of them had watched Women and were serious about it. They even started to analyze Chen Guang's words in their hearts. Some of them briefly read World School of Performing Arts and then put on the shelf. At this moment, they suddenly realized something and fell into deep thought. There were also those who were completely obsessed with World School of Performing Arts. Well, even though these people had received the invitation, they were still cooped up at home or in the hotel. Of course, There were also die-hard anti-fans who had never watched the movie or read the book. At this moment, they were also speechless. Originally, they had prepared a lot of questions to lead Chun Guang into the ditch. There was only one purpose, which was to make him say something that could be taken out of context and cause controversy. However, they never expected that before the bait they had prepared, this guy would jump into the abyss of his own accord. They couldn't even pull him back. Then, Mr. Chun, may I ask if what you said just now can be taken as you think that the previous performing arts are just children's babbling and that your so-called World School of Performing Arts is the real performing arts? After all, there were still smart people in this world. Reporters were best at digging holes. Chun Guang turned back to look at him. Without changing his expression, he nodded and said, "Yes." "Wow. Mr. Chun, do you understand how many people you will offend with such an attitude?" "I understand, but I respect my own heart, and I respect my own art even more. Just as people said when they boycotted me for the sake of performing arts. I'm also crazy for the sake of performing arts. I know where I stand. Out of my sense of responsibility, I have no reason to deny my own artistic level, because my persistence is beneficial to this era." Not only did he jump off the cliff, but he also opened the ejector on his back after jumping off the cliff. He was diving down the mountain. The huge Hugo Hall couldn't quiet down again. There was no need for the interview to continue. What kind of hole was there to dig? He himself was a giant hole. We met a madman. After a long time, Chun Guang walked out of the Hugo Hall in high spirits, leaving behind a large group of shocked reporters and countless online viewers who were watching the live broadcast. Fang Tianyu and LV Xiaoyang looked at Chun Guang's back in silence. No wonder he is the boss. "Fang Tianyu, look at my face. What happened to your face? Were you beaten?" "No. Did you see a word on my face?" "What word?" "I'm impressed. By the way, Buttface, where did the boss go?" "He went to the street community to look for Mrs. Joshdan." F***CK. Is the boss going to hit a man when he's down? Buttface laughed wickedly. "Don't make it sound so bad. I think it's more appropriate to say hit a man when he's down. You have no idea how annoying that old man named Donald Joshdan is." 3 hours later, the storm caused by Chun Guang's nonsense at the press conference was still going strong. People in the film industry who had been humiliated wanted to buy plane tickets to Los Angeles to kill him. As for the members of the Oscar committee who were in Los Angeles, they were even more furious. If it wasn't for them going online and discovering that Chun Guang was this year's world arm wrestling champion, along with the video of Chun Guang destroying the dynamometer with a single punch uploaded by Bonner Pierce, they would have really done it. This damn Huaxia man. Despicable. Shameless. What a clown. Do you think you can get us into the cinema by doing this? In your dreams. You won't be nominated at all. We're not interested in your bullsh *T World Pie. Many people cursed and threw the brand new copies of World Pie, which they had just asked their assistants to buy, into the burning fireplace. At about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the box office statistics in Huaxia were released. It still topped 100 million yuan in a single day. The real-time box office attendance in North America in the morning dropped slightly, falling below 90%, but it was still as high as 84.7%. However, at this moment, because of Chun Guang's arrogance, the North American film industry once again reached a consensus. These people thought that Chun Guang had touched the bottom line that they should not touch. They planned to unite, shut their ears, and poke their eyes blind. No matter how terrifying Chun Guang's box office was, they would never set foot in the cinema. No matter how much other people praised his books, he would never think of reading them again. The Oscars had nothing to do with the box office. You don't have the most basic respect for people in the film industry. No one has ever won an Oscar after offending all the judges. No matter how crazy you are with the yuan, it's impossible. We, the film industry, will never bow to any power. Then, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, another piece of news made this group of people who had just made up their minds to continue to go against Chun Guang pee their pants. Donald Joshdan, the man who seemed to have disappeared into thin air for 3 days, suddenly appeared. On this cold and bleak day, he only wore a tie and a pair of checkered underwear. He appeared on the street openly and was running circles around his Hollywood Huaxia theater. Oh my God. They heard that Chen Guang went to chat with Jenny Josh Dan in the morning. What did he do to Mrs. Josh Dan? Old Donald, who had a tough life. What kind of crazy torture did you go through to do such a thing in this cold winter? Look at his back, running under the afternoon sun. He looked cool, but in fact, extremely miserable. His fat body and the jiggling fat looked so ridiculous, like an absurd mime. Every step he took was so strenuous. He was sweating profusely, his face was flushed, and he was panting. His funny tie was flying left and right in front of his exposed chest. His Scottish-style checkered underwear was hanging on his, but with difficulty. It was slightly loose, and when the wind blew, it trembled endlessly. Every time he ran a few steps with difficulty, he had to stop for a moment and pull his underwear with force. Sunlight shone on his body, causing his shadow to grow even longer. More and more people noticed this ridiculous scene. They gathered around and pointed at the silver-haired Donald from afar. Donald's friends almost burst into tears. Mrs. Josh Dan must have been bewitched. How could she bear to let her husband, who was highly respected in the entire North American film industry, do such a ridiculous thing? The stubborn Donald must have been tortured like a trial by the church in the Middle Ages for him to submit to such an extent. Wait, why is he smiling in the television? Why is the smile on his face so holy and calm, as if he had heard the call of the Lord? Has Donald gone mad? Oh my God! The Oscar committee members, who were highly respected and stubborn, could not help but feel sorry for Donald when they saw his tragic state. They couldn't help but feel terrified. If they continued to resist stubbornly like this, would they end up like Donald? Who gave this Huaxia man the courage to be so crazy? Aren't you afraid of the revenge of the Joshton family and the Edward family? You're humiliating the two great families' faces. Lu Xiaoyang and Fang Tianyu looked at each other as they watched the live report from the LA TV station. What a bastard boss. Heartless. What a crazy boss. He doesn't know how to respect the old and love the young. He tramples on our traditional Huaxia virtues. But face, I just recorded it. You are doomed. F***CK. Except for Tang Xiaokai, not many people knew that this was actually Donald's own choice. Chapter 1085. Jenny Joshdan also knew the truth of the matter, but at the moment, she was also having a headache. What did I do? I didn't do anything. It was Donald who suddenly went crazy. What does it have to do with me? Jenny, are you crazy? How could you treat your husband like this? My dear father, I'm not crazy, but I'm going crazy. How could he do this to himself? I'll let you hear what he said just now. I recorded it. Donald's roar came from the phone. He wasn't angry, but excited. Nobody can stop me. This is something I must do, or else I'll regret it for the rest of my life. I dared to say that to the greatest performing artist in the history of the film industry. I won't be able to forgive myself if I don't fulfill my promise. You don't know how much I regret it. Father, did you hear that? He went crazy on his own. I couldn't stop him. I almost wanted to call the police. But now, everyone thinks that you forced him to run naked. It's okay. They'll find out the truth after a while. I don't have to explain myself. But you'll be known as a domestic abuser. Dear father, your daughter has been known to be a domestic abuser for years. All right, as long as you can handle it well. The Edward family's reputation is very important. On the other hand, Donald was only halfway through his naked run when he was surrounded by people. He couldn't continue. Donald had to call the Huaxia Theater security to push the crowd away so that he could continue. His clothes were so awkward, but in the cold wind, his face was strangely flushed with excitement. Not the slightest bit of coldness could be seen. Boss, why don't we go back? I'm afraid you'll catch a cold. No, you don't understand how I feel now. When a person has a strong heart, the cold can't invade his body at all. But boss, there are too many people here. Isn't this a little too? It's okay. When I decided to come here to fulfill my promise, I was already mentally prepared to welcome the arrival of a new era in the performing arts. What's the point of my sacrifice? Boss, are you sure you didn't do this because of Madam's carrot and stick? What does this have to do with Jenny? You don't know how much he loves me. The security guards of the Huaxia Theater fell silent. What kind of horrifying domestic violence could make Mr. Joshdan say such things so calmly? Donald no longer cared about what the others were saying. He continued to run forward as he welcomed the sunlight. He looked like a teenager indulging himself in the sunset. I had to run faster. I had just finished reading the first volume, and I had just gotten the second volume. I was really looking forward to how big of a surprise the second volume would give me. Donald did not care about how others viewed him. His mind was filled with Chun Guang's World School of Performing Arts. In fact, if it weren't for the fact that he was the one running the laps, it wouldn't have been a big deal in America. In the NBA and NFL, streaking was common. There were men and women, beautiful and ugly. This time, it was because the person running the laps was Donald Joshdan, a big shot in the North American film industry. He was a celebrity, so the impact was huge. It was just like how the domestic violence rumors in the Joshdan family could be written into a book. Ordinary people were always interested in celebrity scandals. This was true everywhere. Tang Xiaokai did not fulfill his promise. Although he found out about it immediately, he did not contact the reporter from the New York Times. But talent from the New York Times came uninvited. This man had embarrassed himself at Chun Guang's press conference that morning. As a result, his reputation in the media world had declined. He was troubled about how to make a comeback, so he did not leave Los Angeles. Instead, he stayed directly opposite the Huaxia Theater in Hollywood. Now that the opportunity had appeared, his wait was worth it. The despicable and shameless Chun Guang had done unspeakable things to Mrs. Joshdan. And then Mrs. Joshdan had done even more unspeakable things to the respected Mr. Joshdan. She had forced Mr. Joshdan to run naked. This must be the biggest scandal in the entire film industry in the 21st century. I must let everyone see how shameless Chun Guang is. Talent blended in with the crowd happily. He gripped his camera and voice recorder tightly and squeezed his way forward with his tall and strong body. There were already reporters being stopped by the security guards of the Huaxia Theater. That was because Donald had said not to let anyone disturb him. Talent rushed to the front. Beside him was a colleague who had just returned in defeat. Talent thought to himself that he was a popular reporter from the New York Times. Usually, people would have to spend money to invite him if they wanted to organize something. He had been humiliated by Chun Guang today because Chun Guang was a country bumpkin for Huaxia. He did not know his identity or the status of the New York Times. But now, it was impossible for Donald not to know. Therefore, Talent shouted at the top of his lungs, "Mr. Joshdan, I'm Talent, a senior reporter from the New York Times. Can I interview you? I only need to take up a short 30 seconds." Talent's voice was full of energy. Even though there was a commotion in the crowd, his voice still penetrated through the countless noises and entered Donald's ears. Donald's running footsteps suddenly stopped. Talent was overjoyed. He thought to himself that the name of the New York Times was indeed useful. He was going to be rich. He would definitely be able to dig out some good news. Then, Donald's originally fair white face turned even paler. He turned his head to look at Talent. F***CK. That Tang Zhonghua kid is so petty. Is he really going to put me on the cover? Someone come. Take him away. Put this guy from a New York Times on the Huaxia Theater's unwelcome list. Oh yeah, check his camera and phone. If they already have my photo in them, don't return them to him. After Don had finished speaking, he turned around and ran forward even faster as if there were a few wolves chasing after him. Talent's body became light, and his tall figure rose into the air. He was lifted up by two Huaxia Theater security guards who were even stronger and taller than him. "I'm sorry, Mr. Talent. You have to come with us." Talent was dumbfounded. What? What did I do? Why are you doing this to me? We don't know either, but this is the boss's order. If there's any misunderstanding, your New York Times managing editor will personally call Mr. Joshdan. No, this isn't fair. Why are you doing this to me? Why? Talent's screams echoed around the Huaxia Theater until he was dragged far away in the air. Donald didn't sympathize with Talent at all. Even he had lingering fears. **T. Luckily, I reacted quickly. Otherwise, I would really be on the cover of Time magazine. After about half an hour, Don had finally completed his feat of running naked that shocked Los Angeles. Then, he mysteriously disappeared from everyone's sight once again. This time, he hid even more thoroughly. He didn't even pick up his friend's phone calls. It was only when the police received a call from his friend that they directly knocked on his door to confirm his safety. Only then did his friends feel slightly more at ease. Even so, Donald's friends in the Motion Picture Association still felt uneasy. They expressed deep sympathy for his experience and secretly prayed for him, hoping that he could walk out of the trauma as soon as possible and secretly move to another house. Everyone knew that since Chen Guang's goal was to win the Oscar for Best Actor, he would come looking for him sooner or later. Although the final selection, nomination, and voting were randomly selected in the membership system, it was still impossible to determine who would have the right to vote when the time came. However, who knew if Chen Guang, the nouveau riche of China, would cast his net wide and catch the fish and would rather kill the wrong person than let him go? They didn't want to admit that they were afraid. It was just a rare vacation. To a certain extent, Donald's silent protest of hiding his head and not giving any explanation was also his silent protest against Jenny's years of domestic violence. Anyway, Jenny would have to bear the blame for a while. She would probably be gentler to me in the future, right? However, it wasn't just Jenny who was having a headache. The real culprit behind Donald's streaking incident, Chen Guang, was even more dumbfounded. Under Fong Tianyu's lead, he knocked on the doors of several senior members and standing committee members of the Motion Picture Association, but the results were almost the same. "Sorry, sir. My husband has gone on a long trip. Madam, is it convenient for you to tell me where Mr. Ballmer went? It's very regrettable. My husband and his friend suddenly wanted to go on a trip. The theme of their trip is returning to nature. Simply put, they didn't bring their phones." Fong Tianyu was speechless. "Sorry, sir, my husband is hospitalized. My father has just gone to Africa." A middle-aged woman in her 50s said, "My mother has just participated in a scientific expedition in Antarctica. She will only be back in half a month at the earliest." Another middle-aged woman in her 30s said, "My grandfather has just boarded the manned spacecraft Discovery. He will be spending about 2 months in the space station." In the end, Chen Guang and Fong Tianyu nearly tore this lady's house apart. "You're already in your 30s, and your grandfather can still go to the space station? Why don't you just go to space?" Damn it, this group of people is purposely avoiding me. Their excuses are getting more and more ridiculous. Chen Guang complained angrily. Fong Tianyu comforted him. "Boss, to be honest, if I were them, I would also avoid them. Although we know what you're capable of, your attitude at the press conference this morning made us feel that you were too arrogant. Actually, this isn't a big deal. We can always find people by waving our checks. However, this old man Donald did something like this in the afternoon. They have no choice but to be afraid. Boss, is it convenient for you to tell us how you communicated with Madame Joshdan? How could she do such a thing to Donald?" Chen Guang turned to look at Fong Tianyu. After a brief moment of confusion, he came to a realization. F***CK. I was wondering, what's wrong, boss? I only had a simple chat with them in Madame Joshdan's neighborhood and gave them a few of my sharpening pencils. Oh no, I mean miniature sculptures. Before I left, I only told Madame Joshdan that even though Donald's personality is terrible, it's a good thing to learn from his mistakes, so I told her not to make things difficult for him anymore. Fong Tianyu's face was full of disbelief. Then the question is, why did Donald run around naked? It can't be that he likes it, can it? Chen Guang waved his hand righteously. Nonsense. Of course it's his own decision. Madame Joshdan is a disgusting but kind person. Running around naked was a bet between Donald and Tang Xiaokai. Although Tang Xiaokai and I didn't take it seriously, who knows why he would care so much? If it wasn't you, boss, who said that, I would almost believe it. Scram, scram, scram. Go somewhere cool. It's annoying. Chapter 1086. At 1 o'clock in the morning, the North American box office on the 4th day was released. The figures were even more shocking, reaching an incredible $48 million. In fact, according to past experience, a new film should have reached the upper limit on the second or third day of its release. However, because of various reasons, the box office curve of Women became abnormal, so it only reached this terrifying figure on the fourth day. Everyone in Tianguang Group naturally raised their glasses to celebrate. Whether their boss could succeed in the Olympic Games or not, at least the box office had completely exceeded their expectations. From tomorrow onwards, the box office would probably show a steady decline, but it was not a big deal. According to the current situation, Women had a great chance of breaking the $1 billion mark. It would be the first Chinese film in history to break the $1 billion mark in North America. What was even more crazy was that this was a Chinese film without English dubbing, only English subtitles. Women had raised the North American box office of a Chinese film by at least 8 times from the $128 million of the second place. Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. As a domestic film, the entire production team and the leading actors were all Chinese. Women completely overturned the title of Chinese films as the poison in the box office in Europe and the United States. This achievement was unprecedented, considering the fact that the domestic box office had broken 100 million in one day. The final domestic box office should be able to reach more than 2 billion. Although it could not be compared with the once invincible phenomenon of the New Year blockbuster, The Mermaid, it was very likely to take the second or third place in history. Most importantly, unlike Monsters of X, which had rushed to 2.4 billion the box office, so far, the domestic box office of Women had almost never been fake. As the biggest investor of the film, Tianguang Group certainly deserved a crazy celebration. If it were not for the boss's strong obsession with the Oscars, everything would have been perfect in the company in the middle of the night with a stiff face and dead fish eyes. Everyone knew that the boss did not care about money, only about the Oscars. But now the matter was stuck, and the boss was annoyed. As employees, they had to accompany the boss in annoyance. In terms of publicity, everyone had tried their best. In the selection process of the Oscars, the power of the US dollar was also not to be underestimated. As long as there was an entry point, the boss could give the order and everyone would be more confident. Of course, they could also use Washington's name to curry favor. However, Fang Tianyu and Liu Xiaoyang had already mobilized the entire Tianguang Corporation's 100-man team in the United States and tried everything they could. Apart from finding 2 or 3 small fries, the big shots in the American Film Association who had a say in it had all become tortoises who had withdrawn their heads into their turtle shells. Even if they had the money, they wouldn't know where to start. It was already 3 o'clock in the morning, but the boss still locked himself in his office and did not leave. The employees in the company went back to their hotels to rest, but Liu Xiaoyang and Fang Tianyu couldn't leave. But Face plucked up his courage and knocked on the door. Chen Guang was sitting in the leather chair, looking at the computer with a serious expression. His hands were on his waist, and no one knew what he was thinking. His brows were tightly knitted, and his face was so dark that it could drip water. Buttface stepped forward. "Boss, don't worry too much. We still have a long way to go. There are still nearly 2 months before the list of nominees is submitted. There will always be light at the end of the tunnel. As long as the movie continues to be popular, even if the box office really can't affect the Oscars, you will still have a good reputation. It's impossible for the jury to turn a blind eye. It's a stain on the reputation of the Oscars." Chen Guang let out a long sigh, but did not say anything. "Sorry, boss." Liu Xiaoyang was very nervous. He had known his boss for such a long time, but he had never seen him so depressed. Could it be that the blow to him was really that heavy? Things are not looking good. Didn't Tianguang Group rely on the boss's fearlessness to get to where it was today? If the boss loses his ambition first, how can we, the employees, follow him to succeed? Chen Guang sighed again and finally said, "Damn it. The national football team had lost to Iran. There is no hope for them to advance this time. Even Silver Wolf can't save us." Liu Xiaoyang was speechless. "Damn it. I thought you were thinking about something when I saw your gloomy face. It turns out you were watching the national football team." "Forget it. When I watched the national football team, your expression was even worse than the boss's. You really need a big heart to bear the blow." Speaking of which, the boss is so athletic. Why doesn't he play football? He can beat Messi and Ronaldo in a minute. Forget it. I don't think playing football can make more money than the boss now. While Lu Xiaoyang was letting his imagination run wild, Chen Guang turned off his computer, stood up, and stretched himself. What's wrong? Butt face, do I look like I'm down and out? Lu Xiaoyang shook his head vigorously. No, you look refreshed and domineering. Chen Guang grinned. Ha ha. To tell you the truth, I'm not panicking. Let's just wait and see. At worst, I can buy overpriced WaterhouseCoopers and do something to the general voting. Lu Xiaoyang was speechless. He really wanted to tell Chen Guang that they couldn't buy overpriced WaterhouseCoopers with their current financial resources, even with the explosive box office of Women. After all, PricewaterhouseCoopers was a century-old firm. However, Chen Guang was already walking out with his head swaying. Life is lacking in everything but money. It's truly as lonely as snow. By the way, butt-face, when you are free, you can help me think of something. What should I do to let the whole world know that your boss has the most perfect body on this planet? Lu Xiaoyang's eyelids twitched. Damn it, can you give us a break, boss? Hold an invincible party with thousands of women in one night? Then all the men in the world will regard you as their idol. When Chen Guang was about to agree, Lu Li's voice came from the glass. If you really do that, I will drag you out and cremate you. Chen Guang's expression didn't change. Good choice, but face, Lu Li continued. I will also cremate you, by the way. Chen Guang's expression changed greatly. What a bad idea. If you were born in ancient times, you would definitely be a slanderer who gave advice to King Yu of Zhou. Poor butt-face didn't know that he had walked around the crematorium quietly. He just looked at Chen Guang's back and thought, my boss has become so upright all of a sudden. At 1 a.m. the next day, the domestic box office for the fourth day was released. The daily box office exceeded 100 million, but it was a little lower than the previous day. At 1 a.m., the North American box office for the fifth day was released. It was a little lower than the previous day, but it still reached $44 million. At 1 a.m. the next day, the domestic box office for the fifth day fell below $100 million to $98 million. In the past few days, Chen Guang had tried many ways to contact some big shots in the European and American film circles who could play a role in the Oscar selection process, but he had found nothing. Donald's unusual silence after his streaking really frightened many senior members of the Motion Picture Association in the European and American film circles, especially those near Los Angeles. Chen Guang didn't know what to do about it. He planned to wait for another 2 days. If it didn't work out, he would have to ask Donald, the shameless old man, to do it. D*MN, you've already repented, but you still don't forget to trick me. Even if you want to streak, you should wait until I've settled the matter. Otherwise, you should wave the flag for me after you're done streaking, right? It's good that you're letting yourself loose, but don't trick me. Just as Chen Guang was vexed, the Tingguang Group suddenly received an email from China in their corporate mailbox. Chen Guang was overjoyed when he saw it. It was a secret message from Chu Zijin. Recently, the variety show of Tingguang Media in China was in full swing, but Chu Zijin was still able to take time out of her busy schedule to solve his problems. She had sent him some data that she had secretly obtained by using her expertise as the world's top hacker to break through the firewall of Demi Telecom. The data was a comprehensive analysis of the recent call records of the mansion that Chen Guang had visited a few days ago. All the call records pointed to almost the same place. It was located thousands of kilometers away, almost in the easternmost part of the United States, in Princeton, New Jersey. This bunch of old bastards, in order to shirk responsibility, they actually hid from the West Coast to the East Coast. They really hid far and deep. If it wasn't for the fact that I have a super hacker at home, I really wouldn't be able to do anything to you. Square Skull, book me a plane ticket immediately. I'm flying to New Jersey. With a wave of his hand, Chen Guang officially launched the Chun family army's eastbound expedition. Let's see where you can run to. After making up his mind, there was nothing left for him to do in Los Angeles anyway. Chen Guang was now pursuing efficiency, so of course he left. That afternoon, He took a direct flight to New Jersey. The benefits of being the recipient of the Global Civil Aviation Association's Hero Medal were obvious now. No matter when he wanted to buy a plane ticket, he could always buy the earliest flight, and it was free. Chen Guang only brought Fong Tianyu with him on this trip. All the other employees of the Tianguang Group stayed in Los Angeles. The so-called Mighty Chen family army consisted of 2 people, and the commander was none other than Chen Guang. Vanguard General, Tiger Leopard Cavalry, Logistics, Miscellaneous Soldier, Servant, Comfort Man. All these titles added up to one person, and that person was Fong Tianyu. Although Fong Tianyu's previous relationships were mostly destroyed, at least he could still call out his name when he met him. The 2 of them left quietly and did not make a big fuss. Even many people in the company did not know that Chen Guang had already left. It was already past 8 at night when they arrived in New Jersey. The sky was getting dark, and the 2 of them quietly found a place to stay. They were prepared to go straight to the Eaton Manor, where the big shots of the American Film Association were absconding the next morning. This group of big shots from the Film Association was quite interesting. They were so relaxed, even when they were on the run. They actually agreed to go to a large holiday manor in New Jersey to eat, drink, and have fun. This Eaton Manor had a great background. It was located on the outskirts of Princeton City, close to several universities, and had a rich cultural atmosphere. The manor covered an area of more than 500 acres. It was lush with trees, green grass, and flowers bloomed all year round. The scenery was pleasant. The manor had a racetrack, an opera house, a golf course, a bar, a coffee shop, a movie theater, and other entertainment facilities. There were also dozens of detached villas of various shapes and sizes. This place was roughly equivalent to a high-end club in China, but the interior was more luxurious and focused more on enjoyment. It was filled with a strong smell of capitalism and corruption. Usually, the guests were celebrities from all walks of life in Europe and the United States, as well as celebrities from all walks of life. Even Zuckerberg, who had supported Chen Guang in the past, and people like Mouthy Cannon Connor often brought their families here for holidays. The people from the Film Association could be considered to be very influential. They even asked for a 7-story villa with more than 100 rooms for an impromptu gathering. Despicable. So corrupt that it makes my hair stand on end. Fong Tianyu sat in front of a chair and took out his Sophie tablet to search for the situation of the Eaton Manor on the internet. He could not help but complain crazily the moment he saw the bird's-eye view. Chen Guang quietly took Fong Tianyu's tablet from the side and did not comment. He thought to himself, I've been set up by Donald too badly. I'm being unjustly made a scapegoat. What's more infuriating is that I can't even scold Donald. I'll make this bastard compensate me when I'm almost done with my business. I'll use your handprint wall. I'll have to perform a full set of the 18 dragon subduing palms to vent my anger. Forget it. These are all minor matters. I'll set off to stop them tomorrow morning. Fong Tianyu, is the car ready? We'll drive there tomorrow. Got it, boss. Don't worry about me. Boss, come and see. There's a photo of a big shot in the film industry taking a plane with 3 supermodels. It's been posted online. He must be at the Eaton Manor too. This is too shameful. 3 fresh flowers is stuck in cow dung. Chen Guang silently looked at his only follower, Fong Tianyu, and sighed to himself. He thought to himself, other people take supermodels, but I take a Fong Tianyu. Comparisons are odious. So here's the problem. Should I sneak in or not? Chapter 1087. After hesitating for a long time, Chen Guang couldn't bear it anymore. He didn't feel bad for Fong Ji. He felt bad for himself. That night, the 2 went to bed early. Neither of them was in the mood to look at the North American box office. Of course, it was in a different room. The next day, the 2 woke up at 6 in the morning. Chen Guang immediately drove from Newark to Princeton. At around 7:30 in the morning, it was the time for Princeton's morning news. Chen Guang and Fong Tianyu stood side by side at the gate of Eaton Manor. The top-notch Lincoln that was worth hundreds of thousands of dollars couldn't exempt Chen Guang and Fong Tianyu from the security check at Eaton Manor. Fortunately, The two had already used Tang Xiaokai's personal connections to get an invitation to Eaton Manor yesterday. The car also belonged to the Eaton Manor's lifetime membership. The two only rolled down the window and showed their faces. They then flashed the invitation and were immediately let in. Why don't we climb over the wall? Wouldn't we be able to catch them off guard? Fong Tianyu, who was sitting in the car, was puzzled. Chen Guang turned his head and looked at the guy sitting in the passenger seat. He was wrapped up like a dumpling in the winter after Christmas. Because your behavior is too suspicious. If we get recognized after climbing over the wall, I can't afford to lose face. Fong Tianyu was speechless for a while. After a while, he said worriedly, "They won't run away after hearing us, right?" Chen Guang shook his head and said, "Not likely. We might be shameless, but they are. After all, they're all famous people. It's already ridiculous for them to hide from me from Los Angeles to Princeton. I'm not a monster, and I don't eat people. There's no reason for them to be so afraid of me. Otherwise, how would they be able to face others?" Fong Tianyu nodded and said, "Makes sense. Hey, it's that old castle-like building over there." "Yeah, I see it." 5 minutes later, the two of them looked at each other in dismay as they stared at the empty castle-style villa that was in a mess. Chen Guang had never imagined that this group of so-called upper-class people would be as timid as a mouse. 5 minutes ago, when their car arrived at the foot of the villa, they were temporarily stopped outside by the bodyguards at the gate. It was not until Chen Guang crushed the big iron gate railing of the courtyard of the villa and snatched away the gun from the hand of a reckless guy who tried to take out a gun in a lightning speed and learned from the trick of the fire cloud, evil god, that he fired at his own temple and then used 2 fingers of his other hand to clamp the bullet. Only then did he completely control the situation. Ignoring Fong Tianyu's admiring gaze, Chen Guang threw a domineering sentence at the bodyguards. "Although I'm suspected of trespassing, I came to visit with good intentions. I, Chen Guang, am a celebrity in the United States. It's impossible that you don't know me. You should be able to guess why I'm here. I'm warning you one last time. Whoever dares to pull out a gun will die. The American law is a very interesting thing. Under normal circumstances, it can be manipulated by the power of money. For example, although it looks like I'm trespassing, my lawyer will also defend me in court because I'm a celebrity. If I kill someone, it should be 100% judged as self-defense, right?" Then, the two of them swaggered into the villa and saw a scene that gave him a headache. On the long table in the hall on the first floor of the villa was a half-eaten breakfast. Half of the bread was thrown on the table or on the ground, and the TV was still playing Princeton's Morning City News. Then, the two of them went straight upstairs. Most of the doors were left open, and the bedding inside was still warm. This scene looked like a city that was suddenly attacked by the German Blitzkrieg during World War II. The people who used to live in these rooms and the people who were eating breakfast downstairs had fled in panic, one could easily guess. Chen Guang and Fong Tianyu went downstairs and asked him, "Fong Tianyu, do I look scary?" Fong Tianyu shook his head and said, "No, boss, you're a kind person. You win people over with your virtue." Chen Guang nodded and said, "Yeah, these people are avoiding me like I'm a monster." Fong Tianyu silently turned his face to the side, thinking that a walking and living fire cloud evil god was probably no different from a scourge or ferocious beast. At this moment, hundreds of people from the Motion Picture Association who were hiding in the underground monitoring room of the villa felt the same way as Fong Tianyu. About half of these people were neatly dressed, with breadcrumbs and milkshakes hanging from the corners of their mouths. The other half were more embarrassed. They were wearing all kinds of underwear, and the crowded and narrow and dark basement was filled with the smell of old hormones. However, at this time, the people inside didn't care about how they were dressed. Instead, they all stared at the monitor and couldn't speak for a long time. "Mr. Nicholas, wasn't what the Huaxiao man did a stunt we added in the movie? The Matrix? Bullet time? Quicksilver? I think he's more powerful than Quicksilver. When he shot, the muzzle was less than 30 centimeters away from his head. His left hand was still in his pocket. I told you, this Chinese man is evil." "Shut up. What era is this? Do you really think there are vampires and dark wizards in this world? I'm Nicholas, but I don't even know the existence of vampires. But how do you explain this Chinese man's action? Forget it, it doesn't matter. Anyway, we just hide here and don't go out. Damn it, why aren't these two leaving? Do they want to finish watching the morning news? *T, it's so cold. On the other side, Chen Guang and Fong Tianyu were sitting in the hall on the first floor of the villa, casually picking some long bread, eggs, and milk from the long buffet table. The two left in a hurry in the morning and didn't have time to eat breakfast. Now is the time to make up for it. The sound from the TV rang in Chen Guang's ears, but his eyes were on the phone in front of him. On the other side of the world, it was past 8 p.m. in China. Chu Zijin had just finished a busy day and was taking a short break in her hotel room in Yanjing. But she was also a person who couldn't stay idle. She sat on the chair and typed quickly on the keyboard, chatting with Chen Guang on WeChat. Did you find them? I found them, but I can't find them. Chen Guang reported his current situation to Chu Zijin. My international friends are too rude. They ran away without even putting on their pants. God knows where they are right now. I'll have to trouble you to help me dig 3 feet underground again. Otherwise, I'll have to summon some special agents from a country. They're the best at hiding and whatnot. Chu Zijin replied after a few minutes. I know where they are. Chen Guang was overjoyed. Where? They're about 50 meters below you. The Eden Manor's villa was really creative. They even considered extreme, wartime situations. They even have something as magical as a shelter. Do you want to see what's inside? I've successfully hacked into the Eden Manor's central control system. Chen Guang nodded and opened a WeChat video call with Chu Zijin. What came into view was a variety of colorful underwear that looked like the national flag. This group of people was surrounded in the middle. Behind them was another group of neatly dressed people who looked equally disheveled. It was a brightly lit but slightly creepy room. Right in front of everyone was a huge computer monitor. It showed Chen Guang and Fong Tianyu sitting in the hall. Ugh, so miserable. Even though Chen Guang was the instigator, he felt a little embarrassed seeing such an embarrassing scene. Friends, I'm really just here to talk. I really don't intend to do anything unspeakable to you. Don't be like this. I admit that my idea of winning an Oscar is a little crazy, but I'm not completely unreasonable. I've even written a monograph on my world-class acting skills. My contributions in the field of performing arts and my contributions in the field of linguistics are definitely on par. It's just an Oscar. Every year, your miserable faces make me look like a big villain. That's not appropriate. Fong Tianyu leaned over. Boss, what's this? A gay film? Chen Guang looked back at him. No, it's the people from the Motion Picture Association. They're dressed like this and hiding underground. F***CK. How much hatred do they have? What should we do now? Drag them out and reason with them? Chen Guang shook his head at first, but then nodded. He couldn't make up his mind. It wasn't easy to trap everyone here. He was a little reluctant to let go of this opportunity. But after all, they were all so-called celebrities, especially some of them who were almost 70 or 80 years old, but they were still shivering in the cold in the shelter wearing such skimpy clothes. Uncle couldn't bear to do this, and neither could Andy. Am I really that bad? Right at this moment, a voice resounded from the television behind Chen Guang. Here's an important piece of news. Princeton Laboratory announced that the culprit of the lab sample theft case voluntarily surrendered 3 days ago and has been handed over to the Princeton police. Because the case involves a Chinese person, Princeton has contacted the Chinese embassy. After many negotiations, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Science and Technology have agreed to formally file a lawsuit today. They will sue the Chinese Zhuo Jingxi for theft, espionage, stealing trade secrets, and many other crimes. If convicted, the Chinese Zhuo Jingxi will face a minimum of 5 years in prison. The trial will officially start at the Princeton District Court at 10 o'clock in the morning. Welcome to Princeton Morning City News. This is the end of this broadcast. 2 seconds later, Chen Guang shot up from his seat and yelled, F***CK. Fong Tianyu's attention was still on Chen Guang's phone. He didn't hear the broadcast behind him. What's wrong, boss? Chen Guang immediately ran out. This old man must be the son of destiny. Let's not talk about anything else, and let's not care about this matter for now. Let's go. Fong Tianyu jogged behind him. He was confused. What's going on? Where are we going? Chen Guang looked back at him. There was a hint of madness in his calm expression. We're robbing the execution ground. What? Fong Tianyu was stunned. He then said in confusion, What's going on? What the hell is robbing the execution ground? Like in the TV series? This is going to cause a war. Chen Guang said fiercely, I'd rather betray the Americans than the Americans betray me. How dare they sentence me? So what if it's a war? Didn't you hear the news on the TV? Zhuo Jingxi is in Princeton right now. She's going to court soon. She might be sentenced to 20 years in prison. Fong Tianyu's mind was filled with 1,000 muffled thunders. He thought, this is too big. Chapter 1088. Zhuo Jingxi did not stay in the cold detention room. Instead, she was placed under house arrest in a 5-star hotel in the center of Princeton. There were a total of 6 groups of people guarding the door. They were the legal staff of the Princeton Laboratory, the staff of the American Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Science and Technology, and the staff of the Princeton District Court and local law enforcement agencies. The last group consisted of a total of 4 Asian people, 1 woman and 3 men. The woman looked to be in her 40s. She had fair skin, phoenix eyes, and willowy eyebrows. She wore a simple gray trench coat. This middle-aged woman was very beautiful, but the strange thing was that there was a murderous aura in her eyes that could not be ignored. The other 3 men all had clean, square faces. Their skin was tanned from the sun, and they looked very strong. Their bodies were filled with the aura of a soldier. Apart from the 4 Huaxiao people themselves, no one else knew who they were. When they arrested Zhuo Jingxi the day before yesterday, the Princeton local law enforcement agents tried to get the 4 Chinese people to leave. They said that people who had nothing to do with the case should not be there. The 2 sides almost had a conflict because of this. However, the strange thing was that when the atmosphere was tense, the 3 Chinese men did not attack the Princeton agents. Instead, they desperately surrounded the middle-aged woman. However, the 3 men did not seem to want to protect her at all. They seemed to want to stop her from doing something. When the conflict broke out, the woman's expression did not change at all. She looked at the others as if they were dead. The 2 sides did not really fight because the Princeton officials suddenly received a call from the Pentagon. On the phone, a senior CIA official told them to exercise restraint and repeatedly stressed that this was not a simple intellectual property dispute. They could not let the suspects in the theft case be mistreated or mistreated. All trial procedures must strictly follow the rules and regulations. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. The Princeton personnel tried to find out the origins of the 4 Chinese people and the suspects. They want to know if they were Chinese personnel working for foreign affairs. They did not get an answer. They were only warned repeatedly not to try to provoke the other party. Even Zhuo Jingxi, who secretly flew back to New Jersey with Chen Guang on her back, did not know who the 4 people were. She clearly felt that she had left very discreetly and cautiously and did not tell anyone about it. But inexplicably, from the moment she boarded the plane, these 4 people had been sitting next to her. At the time, she didn't notice, but after she got off the plane, the 4 of them followed her closely. The 3 men even took the initiative to help her carry her bag, and the woman came over to chat with her, exchanging some women's skincare and maintenance tips. Zhuo Jingxi immediately became vigilant. Those who were unaccountably solicitous were hiding evil intentions. At that time, her attitude was very cold, and she immediately kept a distance from these people. However, it was useless. The other party was unmoved. Wherever he went, they followed him. The only difference was that they didn't use superglue to stick them together. If it weren't for the fact that she was here to turn herself in, Zhuo Jingxi almost wanted to call 911. But later, especially after she was controlled by Prince's laboratory, Zhuo Jingxi understood that they were here to protect her. She could roughly guess that Chen Guang's status was not what it used to be, and her relationship with Chen Guang was not ordinary. Perhaps without his deliberate instructions, her personal safety must have been the focus of some people. especially after she went abroad. Sitting in the room, Zhuo Jingxi sighed again. She wanted to help him, but she didn't expect that not only would she not be able to help him, but she also caused him trouble. Prince's laboratory was too tough, and there was no room for negotiation. If I had known this would happen, I wouldn't have returned to America. I was too naive. Zhuo Jingxi looked at the television blankly, which was playing news related to her. She didn't know what the country thought of her matter. Perhaps it was just a flash in the eyes of ordinary people, and it wouldn't cause too much of a stir. But obviously, since the special security had caught up, this matter must have caused a stir at a higher level. She sighed again. It's all my fault. I wanted to do this too much. Although Qin Guang said he didn't care, he had already done so much preparatory work at the Tongshan factory. He even ruined the factory's reputation. How could he not care? Zhuo Jingxi knew Qin Guang very well. Although he was leaving, he still couldn't give up. That was why she sneaked back to the United States. But now she realized that she thought things were too simple. She thought that with the knowledge in the field of photocatalysis that she learned from Qin Guang, as long as she threw a little bit of bait, she would be able to make Prince's academic director obediently give in and allow her to use the resources of Prince's laboratory to produce the 5 God-level formulas. They would also no longer hold her responsible for stealing the samples. She never expected that as soon as she arrived in Princeton, she would be firmly controlled by the law enforcement agency that suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Prince had no intention of communicating with her at all. They just wanted to send her to court and make an example out of her. She couldn't even meet the higher-ups of the laboratory who understood technology and knowledge. She could only deal with the stern-faced legal department who didn't understand knowledge. How could she throw out the bait? Was she supposed to talk to these uniformed police detectives or lawyers about photocatalysis? They only had one goal, and that was to send her to court. They wouldn't listen to her brag about the next era of photocatalysis. After all, Prince is a big company. Although Zhuo Jingxi was a rare young scientist, she was still too small in front of the behemoth Prince laboratory. In addition, there was a deeper reason behind Prince's ruthless actions this time. In recent years, there were many senior researchers who returned to China with foreign cutting-edge technology. The United States couldn't do anything about this. They didn't use the Chinese, but the Chinese were indeed good at learning and were exceptionally useful. As for the Huaxiao people, their temperament would make it easy for them to abandon their accumulations here and return to the 6 million square kilometers of land after they had achieved success in their studies. They didn't care about being despised by the mainstream scientific community in the future. They only wanted to use whatever they learned. Because of this, the scientific community in Europe and the United States protested and sued, but basically all of them were useless. In addition, as China continued to rise and become more and more powerful in the international arena, the returned talents were still secretively used in the military and other high-end industries that were separated from the people's livelihood. In recent years, China had become more and more unscrupulous in this regard. There were also more and more technology leaks and outflows in the people's livelihood. The European and American industries were angry, but did not dare to say anything. However, they could not use the patent lawsuits that were common in the world to crush Chinese companies. This was because China was getting stronger day by day. It was very strong in military, politics, economy, and other aspects. There was almost no bottom line for the protection of technology talents. They couldn't deal with it by force, kidnapping, or even assassinating people like they did to other third-world countries. They could only go to court. Patent lawsuits were difficult, and transnational patent lawsuits were even more difficult. Patent lawsuits from Europe and the United States to China were the most difficult. What Zhuo Jingxi did this time was actually not uncommon. It was just that her behavior was worse. Not only did she go back, but she also brought back samples. Originally, Prince couldn't do anything to her, but he didn't expect her to walk right into the trap. Because of this, as the leader of the European and American research institutions, Prince did not hesitate to use Zhuo Jingxi as a model. His purpose was to deter other Chinese researchers who were eager to make trouble, to prevent similar situations from happening one after another. The morning news ended. Zhua Jingxi looked back at the clock on the wall. It was already 8:30 in the morning. She squeezed the notebook in her hand, hesitating if she should write down a formula in the notebook and throw it out in court. But she quickly shook her head and gave up on this idea. Prince's higher-ups wouldn't appear in court. Even if she wrote down the formula, no one would be able to understand it. She couldn't prove her innocence, because she wasn't innocent to begin with. Besides, even if Prince's technical backbone was present, they wouldn't be able to understand the formula without a long explanation. Zhua Jingxi wasn't worried about the formula leaking. Even if someone had the chemical formula in their hands and didn't know the synthesis method, it was impossible to synthesize the product by luck. Others would only treat it as their own sophistry and imagination, thinking that it was nonsense. No matter how talented a human was, there was a limit. An individual couldn't possibly be above a large scientific research institution like Prince. At 9 o'clock in the morning, there was a gentle knock on the door. Zhua Jingxi sighed and stood up. It was time to go to court. Forget it. It's my responsibility, and I have to admit it. If I go to jail, so be it. Right now, Chen Guang should still be busy with his Oscars in Los Angeles, right? When he's done and hears that I'm in jail in America, he'll definitely be furious, right? Thinking about it carefully, as a teacher, she really wasn't as mature as her student. She was too naive. Zhua Jingxi wasn't particularly afraid. She knew that Chen Guang definitely wouldn't ignore her. All of her crimes seemed appalling, but at the end of the day, there was only one word that could solve it: compensation. The research and development cost of the samples taken away was more than $10 million. With Chen Guang's current financial resources, this wasn't a big problem. Zhua Jingxi knew that he would definitely take care of this matter. Whether or not he paid in the end, he would definitely have a way. It was just that the more Chen Guang did, the more stupid and childish she seemed. This made her feel extremely embarrassed. In addition, she couldn't help but admire Chen Guang's foresight. If it weren't for the 4 special Chinese escorts outside the door, she probably wouldn't be comfortably under house arrest in the hotel. Instead, she would be lying on a cold iron bed in a detention center. My sistria, please. The staff of the Princeton District Court looked at Zhua Jingxi with a smile as she opened the door. Then, he raised his hand to stop the hand of another agent next to him that was trying to reach out with the handcuffs, signaling him to put it away. Zhua Jingxi nodded and walked out first. The remaining 10 or 20 staff members were about to surround her, but the 4 Chinese people, 3 men and 1 woman, quietly stood behind Zhua Jingxi and didn't let the rest of the people get close. The lawyer from the Princeton Laboratories legal department saw this and was a little unhappy. However, the court staff next to him comforted him. My sistria doesn't show any signs of escaping. This case itself is more related to commercial crimes. She doesn't pose a threat to others, so of course there's no need to wear handcuffs. A little further in front, the official in charge of this matter from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs whispered, "Miss Zhua, are you sure you don't need to hire a lawyer? Then I'm afraid you'll have to hire a public lawyer." Zhua Jingxi thought to herself, "Ever since I arrived in Princeton, I've been under house arrest. My phone has been confiscated. How am I supposed to find a lawyer?" At this moment, a Chinese man standing behind Zhua Jingxi interrupted, "The embassy has already hired a law firm for Miss Zhua. The lawyer and the jury arrived in Princeton last night." Whatever. Zhua Jingxi didn't comment on this. The evidence of the case was conclusive, and Princeton also had surveillance cameras. The samples that she brought back were confiscated at the time, and her fingerprints were all on them. With all the witnesses and material evidence, even if she found the legal team that defended Simpson, they wouldn't be able to prove her innocence. It didn't matter whether she had a lawyer or not. On the other hand, Chen Guang and Fang Tianyu, who had already arrived at the Princeton District Court in advance, instantly became extremely busy. "Fang Tianyu, you just contacted a lawyer, right? Make it clear, I want the best lawyer in the United States. Fees are not a problem." Boss, aren't we going to rob the execution ground? Isn't that right? Then who were you talking to on the phone just now? Didn't you say that they would be here soon? The boss of the Chinese mafia in New Jersey. I asked for a few gunmen. Chen Guang, are you an idiot? If I really wanted to rob the execution ground, why would I need gunmen? I alone am equivalent to an army. Get a lawyer. Quick. Chapter 1089. Fong Tianyu hurriedly called the Chinese big shot in New Jersey. The other party was also stubborn and had a close relationship with Fong Tianyu in the past. Even though they knew that it was a robbery, they actually managed to pull out a lineup of 4 to 5 smuggled outlaws in just a few minutes. These people were also stubborn. When they heard that they were going to attack the Princeton District Court, they were not afraid at all. Then again, there's bound to be a brave man with a great reward. And that big shot knew that Fong Tianyu was working for Chen Guang. The boss also knew that Chen Guang was a rich man, and he knew that Chen Guang did not lack money. When he found a gunman, he also thought that if there was a high reward, there would be a brave man. Everyone knew that Boss Chun did not lack money, and there was no way they would lose out if they worked for him. As long as they could get things done and solve Boss Chen's problem, the world was big, and there was nowhere they couldn't go. Not to mention that they were illegal immigrants. But after losing so many of his capable subordinates, he didn't dare to earn Chen Guang's money. In the end, he felt a little reluctant in his heart. Fortunately, Fong Tianyu immediately called again. He did not want a gunman, but a lawyer. The boss was overjoyed. Gunmen are my profession, but lawyers are my old friends. How can people who do underground work in America not have a good relationship with lawyers? He immediately said, "Brother Fong, give me 5 minutes. I have a good friend in Princeton." "Okay, thank you." After hanging up the phone, Fong Tianyu thought for a bit. He did not rush to call Tang Xiaokai again. He wanted to see if the people that Tang Xiaokai found were good enough. On the other hand, Chen Guang had already run out of the court. He cursed, "Mother asterisk her. They said it was a public trial, but they didn't let me in. They said I'm not their citizen." Fong Tianyu looked at him silently. "Boss, this is their territory after all." Chen Guang stared at him and said, "But they want to interrogate Chinese people. This is an international incident, and they are not following the rules." Fong Tianyu was speechless. He thought to himself, "Boss, you're the one who doesn't follow the rules." In fact, if it weren't for the fact that he knew that he was in the wrong, Chen Guang really wanted to rush in during the trial to get her out. He was 100% sure that even if he forcibly took them away in court, no one in America would dare to say a word. "Come on, why don't you try touching me? If the Vice Minister of Huaxia stomped his foot here, do you dare touch a finger of mine?" Well, I'm not at the vice ministerial level anymore. Forget it, this was not important. Although the old man was no longer in power, his influence was still there. The most important thing was that the USA would not dare to use extreme measures against him. They did not have the ability to do so. It was just like when America's own minister came to China. Not only did he not expose his identity, but once he brought out his name, police cars lined the streets to welcome him. If you push me too far, I can show you the power of a martial sage. He wasn't afraid of ordinary firearms, but they definitely wouldn't dare to use their killing weapons on him. The matter could only be left unsettled. Although Chen Guang was confident in his heart, he had no intention of falling out with Su Tao. Chen Guang did not need to ask why Zhui Jingxi came to Princeton without telling him. She came for the equipment and raw materials in Prince's laboratory. She had good intentions and had the confidence to negotiate, but Prince's laboratory's reactions were too arrogant. They either didn't believe Zhui Jingxi's words at all, or they simply hadn't communicated with her on the subject of knowledge. However, since she was here and she was wronged, Chen Guang felt that as a man, he had to protect teacher Zhui's feelings and fight to make her happy. This was the sublimation of the ultimate realm of picking up a girl. Not only did he have to conquer her academically, he could not let her suffer the slightest bit, and he had to take care of her emotionally. If she had already been wronged because of a moment of carelessness, it didn't matter. "You're my man, I'll get back at you. What my woman does, even if it's wrong, must be right. Even if the whole world thinks she's wrong, I must make her right." In any case, she really needed the 5 God-level photocatalyst formulas. Prince had the ready-made stuff anyway. Since teacher Zhua had flown over from so far away, she had to really get this done. It would give her a sense of accomplishment and make her feel that this trip was not in vain. Therefore, when Chen Guang was chased away by the court, he did not lose his temper. He asked Fong Tianyu to find a lawyer. The two waited for a few more minutes before the Chinese mafia boss called back. He gave Fong Tianyu a phone number and said that he was already on his way here. You found a lawyer? Isn't he awesome? Fong Tianyu nodded fiercely. Super awesome. The partner of Baker Law Firm, the super awesome kind. Chen Guang was skeptical. Which team is better than Simpson's team? Boss, your request is too much. That's a dream team. Any one of them is a big shot among big shots. Although, boss, you have the financial resources to build a dream team, time is a little tight. Where are you going to find so many powerful people in such a short amount of time? But Baker Law Firm really can't be underestimated. They are now the largest law firm in the world. If you give them 3 more days, they can really create a dream team as strong as the Simpson case. Of course, there's another condition. We have to make sure that our budget is sufficient. These people are so expensive that it's like they're robbing us. Chen Guang asked, can they earn as much as me? Fong Tianyu shook his head fiercely. No, since it's the largest law firm in the world, their connections must be good. Let's count on the people here first and see how it goes. All right, call the embassy immediately. No matter what, let's protest first. We have to go to court to participate in the trial. What's the point of waiting outside? This was the good thing about having subordinates. Letting Chen Guang handle this matter himself would take him a few minutes just to find the embassy's phone number. About half an hour later, the two of them sat in the middle of the Princeton District Court's hall under the strong protest of the Chinese embassy. It was exactly 9:30 a.m., half an hour before Zhuo Jingxi's trial. Chen Guang was not panicking. While he had asked Fong Tianyu to contact the embassy, he had also contacted the Guangdong General Administration. The negotiations with Prince's laboratory might have fallen through, but there was still the possibility of making a big news. No matter how powerful he was still alone. He did not have 3 heads and 6 arms. It was always better to bring a few special people along, just in case. When he made the call, he was completely at ease. He could not help but feel comforted by Xian Qin's reliable work. Teacher Zhuo actually had an expert by his side, even without his orders. It was the leader of the Flower sect, which was relatively strong among the 27 sections. She was known as Ani Mei. She was an expert at the peak of skin strength. Mei Shangshu, although Zhuo Jingxi said that she had been under house arrest for more than 2 days, she had actually been served well and had not suffered any grievances. It was all thanks to Ani Mei, a senior in the pugilistic world, who had lowered herself to protect her. He heard that Auntie Mei had volunteered. He did not know if she had too much free time in the country and wanted to go abroad for a stroll or something. Of course, Chen Guang felt that it was more likely that his charisma was too strong, which made Auntie Mei have the urge to worship him. In short, it was a false alarm, and everything was fine. In addition, Fong Tianyu also confirmed another thing with the embassy. The embassy had also prepared a team of lawyers for Zhuo Jingxi. Although it seemed that there was no hope of a comeback, they had prepared all the information in the past 2 days. The two sides contacted each other. Lawyer Pizarro from the Baker Law Firm had not yet arrived, but he had already become the boss of this temporary team of lawyers. The people found by the embassy had no objections. The Baker Law Firm and Pizarro were both well known. They were eager to have a chance to contact Pizarro through this case. At 9:45, Pizarro did not come to the courtroom. Instead, he directly contacted the team of lawyers found by the embassy, who were contacting the defendant, Zhuo Jingxi. As expected of a top lawyer with a reputation, it took him less than 10 minutes to understand the information prepared by the defense team and come to a particularly painful conclusion in his heart. To win this case was as difficult as winning an Oscar for his employer, Chen Guang. In short, there was no chance at all. Pizarro was a little shaken. If he had known this would happen, he would not have taken this case. Although there was no agreement, if he went back on his word, it would be equivalent to offending both the Chinese mafia boss and Chen Guang. Thinking about the fate of the poor old Donald Josh Dan, whose social status was not lower than his, the lawyer did not have the courage to quit. He did not want to see the explosive news of him running around naked on the internet tomorrow. Forget it, I'll just bite the bullet and do it, Pizarro thought. At 9:55, The courtroom was already filled with all kinds of people. There were reporters, ordinary people, and even some students and professors from nearby universities came to watch the show. Some well-informed people recognized Chen Guang and could not help but be confused. Wasn't this Chinese man busy with his movie in Los Angeles? What was he doing here? Needless to say, Women was a really good movie. Mr. Chun, can I have your autograph? I'm a loyal fan of yours. Your movie is amazing. An old professor said. Chen Guang signed it for him on account of his age. Mr. Chun, can I take a photo with you? Last night, I want to watch a movie with my classmates. We all think you have a good chance of winning an Oscar. It was a brown-haired girl with big wavy hair. She was probably of Mexican descent. Chen Guang also took a photo with her because of her good looks, big breasts, and good voice. Chen Guang, can I beat you up? F***ck off. This idiot was obviously a fan of William Jones. Hello, Mr. Chun. I'm a reporter from New Jersey Weekly. May I ask why you are here? You were in Los Angeles yesterday, and you're in Princeton today. Is it a coincidence? You're both Chinese. Do you know each other? No comment. I'm a reporter from Pan American Technology, newspaper. Go away. I'm not doing interviews today. Chen Guang was annoyed and was about to lose his temper. However, the judge came in early and saved him. The judge banged his hammer heavily, signaling the people to be quiet. This was a court, and they had to maintain silence. At 10 a.m. sharp, Zhuo Jingxi entered the courtroom from the side door accompanied by many people. Chapter 1090. Zhuo Jingxi's expression was calm until she saw Chen Guang waving at her from within the crowd. Her expression changed in an instant. First, she looked pleasantly surprised. Then she blushed and turned her head away, as if she was ashamed to see anyone. After a few seconds, she turned back and looked at Chen Guang apologetically. Her eyes seemed to be able to speak. I'm sorry, I've caused you trouble again. Chen Guang felt that it would be a pity if Zhuo Jingxi didn't become an actor with her ability to change expressions. It was obvious that Pizarro had been busy talking and hadn't told Zhuo Jingxi that he was actually hired by Chen Guang. Zhuo Jingxi saw that Pizarro was leading the team and thought that he was the head lawyer hired by the embassy. When Zhuo Jingxi finally calmed down and sat in the defendant's stand, Chen Guang winked at her to calm her down. He didn't say anything else and just planned to wait and see. But from their simple eye contact and body language, everyone in the courtroom could tell that they were in cahoots. The judge secretly tidied his wig and felt a headache coming on. This was a major case involving foreign countries, and it seemed to involve a big shot from China. Prince's laboratory thought that they had a soft persimmon, but it turned out to be a hornet's nest. The most tragic thing was that because of the special circumstances, the judge couldn't reveal the inside story for the time being. As early as yesterday, he had started to feel pressure from all sides, including the will of the White House and the Pentagon. The political forces wanted him to get a lighter sentence, but the scientific community wanted him to get a harsher sentence. Both sides were big shots, and he felt very uncomfortable being stuck in the middle. Besides, some forces from China, including the attitude of the Chinese embassy, could also influence his decisions. But now, there's another Chinese celebrity, Chen Guang, who has been causing a huge commotion in America. Naturally, this matter would become more complicated. Prince's legal department and the prosecution's team had also noticed Chen Guang's existence. Furthermore, they had also recognized Pizarro, the leader of the defense team. Pizarro was famous for his ability to distort black and white. The plaintiff thought to himself that they were a little unprepared. Although the evidence was extremely beneficial to them, in terms of status in the Jianghu, they could barely fight Pizarro to a draw. If he had known this would happen, he would have hired a big-shot lawyer from the Ohua law firm. Forget it. The current situation is that they have the absolute advantage. As long as they fight the lawsuit step by step, they should not lose. This was a public trial that received a lot of attention. Although it was not broadcasted live on television to protect the privacy of the accused, there was no shortage of live text broadcasts throughout the country. In addition, there were countless pairs of eyes in the scientific community waiting for the good news. If he lost a lawsuit like this, his law firm would never receive any more big business from the scientific community. I can't lose. At 10 o'clock in the morning, the public trial began on time. Of course, Zhuo Jingxi did not stand there shackled like a normal defendant. Instead, she sat behind the defendant's stand shyly, guiltily, and calmly. Pizarro had asked her to try not to talk in court. If she was asked about her motive for taking away the sample, she should try to say that it was unintentional. She could say that she had accidentally taken the wrong bottle when she was packing up her cosmetics. Although it was obviously a lie, the purpose of a lawyer's existence was to turn lies into facts. The suspect did not even realize that she had taken the wrong bottle. There was a huge difference between intentional and unintentional. Then why was there a few grams of the sample missing? What's so strange about that? She had found out that she had taken the wrong bottle after returning to China, but she had wanted to get it back as soon as possible. She had left it anywhere, and someone had mistaken it for a face cream. What? You're asking who used it again? Where's the sample that was used as a face cream? You'll have to ask China's drainage system. Pizarro dared to come up with such a strategy because of his brief communication with Zhuo Jingxi. Although she had been briefly questioned in the past 2 days, she had never said anything. Next, it was time for the plaintiff, Prince's legal department spokesperson, to explain the situation. Then, as the defendant, Zhuo Jingxi would lie according to Pizarro's instructions. Then, it would be a fierce battle of words between the prosecution's legal team and the defense team, led by Pizarro. The two sides talked back and forth from civil law to the patent bill. The plaintiff claimed that Zhuo Jingxi's actions had brought immeasurable losses to Prince's laboratory. It was a violation of moral and business rules, and also a violation of the law. The defendant firmly denied it and insisted that it was just a misunderstanding. The battle between the two sides was so intense that the staff in charge of the text broadcast almost couldn't type in time. If it was another defense lawyer, he would have lost in court. No matter how glib his tongue was, Prince's side had too much evidence. Fortunately, it was Pizarro. Although he gradually fell into a disadvantageous position, he did not completely lose until the court adjourned at noon. At noon, Chen Guang used his identity as an official of the Chinese Embassy and Ministry of Foreign Affairs to communicate with Zhuo Jingxi for exactly 5 minutes. I'm sorry. The first sentence the two said when they met in the reception room was Zhuo Jingxi's exceptionally guilty apology. Chen Guang shook his head and said, "What are you apologizing for?" Zhuo Jingxi was stunned and said, "Didn't I cause you trouble? I even caused you to drop the movie and come to Princeton." Chen Guang wanted to play along with Zhuo Jingxi's words and pretend that he sacrificed a lot. However, he thought that it might be a little too shameless, so he told the truth. "You might not believe me, but I arrived at Princeton yesterday afternoon. However, it was because of something else. I only found out about you at 8 o'clock this morning and rushed over." Zhuo Jingxi was stunned and said, "What?" Chen Guang said, "But the process isn't important as long as the result is acceptable. But you really don't have to apologize to me because you didn't cause me any trouble." Zhuo Jingxi was puzzled and said, "That's not trouble." Chen Guang smiled and said, "At least it's not big trouble. I was worried about how to get in touch with Prince before, but now it's just right." "How is it good? They didn't even want to talk to me. I wasted my effort." No. How could it be wasted? You just didn't realize it. Don't worry. I can settle Prince this afternoon." "How?" Chen Guang grinned and said, "Settle them like how I settled teacher Zhuo." Zhuo Jingxi suddenly looked embarrassed and blushed. "Isn't this sacrifice too big?" This time it was Chen Guang who was puzzled and said, "What's so big about this sacrifice? As long as I can move them, I can earn it back." What? You want to earn it back from him?" Zhuo Jingxi was so scared that her face turned pale this time. Chen Guang felt that something was wrong. "What are you thinking?" Zhuo Jingxi said shyly, "Didn't you say that you want to settle Prince like you did me?" The person in charge of the laboratory, Mr. Bravo, is an old man in his 60s. As she said this, her butt on the chair unconsciously twisted from side to side, as if she was thinking of something. F***CK. Chen Guang felt his heart aching, incomparably pained. Where did the once pure teacher Zhuo go? How did the trust between people become like this? That's right, this settled. That teachers would thought was Chen Guang forcefully imparting the 5 god-level formulas to her through a double-forced PY transaction. This was already shocking enough, but then Chen Guang added that she had to earn it back from others after suffering a loss first. Wouldn't that be? Zhuo Jingxi couldn't imagine that scene at all. She just thought it was beautiful and didn't want to look at it. In the end, Chen Guang and Zhuo Jingxi wasted 5 minutes in vain, and they didn't talk about anything serious. Fortunately, Chen Guang's main purpose was to comfort Zhuo Jingxi and help her adjust her mood. When he saw her holding her stomach and laughing nonstop when she left, Chen Guang's goal was basically achieved. Then Chen Guang met with lawyer Pizarro. Chen Guang greatly praised Pizarro's performance in court, and he swiped his card to pay Pizarro's lawyer fees on the spot. He even paid, according to the standard for winning the case, up to $800,000, 50% of the total lawyer fees for winning the case. But Pizarro couldn't be happy because he didn't have any confidence in winning the case in the afternoon. Although he was keen on US dollars, there were rules in their industry, and money was hot. Mr. Chen, I can't take so much money. It'll be difficult to turn the situation around in the afternoon, Pizarro said truthfully. Chen Guang waved his hand indifferently. It's okay. I don't expect to win the case. Pizarro asked blankly. Mr. Chen, then why are you doing this? Chen Guang turned his head and looked at him. Mr. Pizarro, based on your personal experience, is it possible for me to settle this matter in private, which is to say, by paying a compensation fee? Pizarro said without hesitation, of course it's feasible. It's just that Prince might ask for an exorbitant price. After all, there's a lot of room for change in product research and development costs. Chen Guang asked him again, then, can you take the initiative to say this number in court in order to seduce Prince? After all, if we go into private negotiations, the whole process will take a lot of time and effort, and the battle line will be very long. Pizarro thought for a moment, his eyes rolling. According to the information provided by Ms. Zhua, Prince's actual research and development costs are about $10 million. In court, I can't think of a way to get them to say $15 million. Chen Guang snapped his fingers. Okay, then it's decided. Pizarro's eyes widened in shock. Mr. Chen, this is $15 million. As far as I know, Ms. Zhua and you are not. Chen Guang smiled and patted Pizarro, who looked to be more than twice his age. You're a man. You have to be responsible, right? Although it's $15 million, I still have to pay. Mr. Chen, my daughter will graduate from Yale next year. I think you might need a very beautiful legal consultant. Chen Guang turned and ran. This shameless old man sold his daughter so quickly. Actually, Chen Guang was not worried at all. Right now, he was like Jiang Taigong. $15 million might seem like a waste, but sooner or later, he would have to spit it out. Chapter 1091. At 1:30 p.m., the court resumed. The reporters in the court were still the same as in the morning. Since they were following a piece of news, they naturally had to follow it to the end. They were still waiting to make use of this hot topic to create a huge news. Now that the popular Chen Guang was involved, it was even more explosive news. Some well-informed reporters had already found out that Pizarro was not hired by the Chinese embassy. Instead, he was hired by Chen Guang with a large sum of money. As early as noon, they had already sent out the press release, successfully occupying the hot spot, which made their peers envious and gnashed their teeth in anger. However, there were many smart people in the world. It was fine to use Pizarro as a hot topic, but the Chinese were simply walking news machines. As long as they continued to dig deeper, they would eventually find other hot topics. Therefore, at about 1 p.m., another piece of news was unearthed. Some Princeton reporters used other people's sightings of Chen Guang and Fong Tianyu driving into the courthouse's parking lot as a clue. They found out that the two came from the Eaton Manor. He then inquired about the people who lived in the building, and this was going to be fun. Many senior Oscar judges who lived in Los Angeles had secretly moved from the West Coast to the East Coast like thieves. Even many senior Oscar members from other cities in the United States had come to Princeton and lived in the Eden Manor. Coupled with Donald Josh Tynes streaking a few days ago, it was not difficult to guess the motives of these big names in the film industry. They were afraid. This made the reporters unable to help but laugh. They raised their hands and wrote the most malicious article. The evil forces from the East in the film industry pursue the Oscar judges fiercely. Celebrities flee in panic. When this article was released, it was even more popular than the previous article about the lawsuit. After all, Chen Guang's movie was still the one that everyone was paying attention to recently. People from all walks of life in the film industry had different opinions on this, but generally speaking, they felt that Chen Guang's behavior was too much. In the past, people who wanted to win an Oscar also knew how to use public relations, but Chen Guang was the first one who did it so crudely. However, people who didn't particularly care about the film industry discussed this matter with great interest. They felt that the big names in the Motion Picture Association were too embarrassing. Do you have to be so scared? Although Chen Guang is quite eccentric, the United States is a country ruled by law. No matter how crazy he is, he can't put a knife to your neck just for an award, right? Isn't your behavior a disgrace to the upper class? Besides, women is really good. Don't you think you're being too harsh on the Chinese people? Before the word-of-mouth explosion of women, the North American audience and ordinary people still felt that the Film Association's boycott of Chen Guang was upholding justice. But now, with the change of public opinion, especially with the double word-of-mouth explosion of women and World's Pie, many ordinary people really felt that Chen Guang deserved to win the Oscar. The Motion Picture Association's current actions were a little unreasonable, even losing the demeanor of a big country. Therefore, this draft, which was obviously intended to discredit Chen Guang, did not achieve the desired effect. Instead, many people openly criticized the Motion Picture Association for treating the fair and serious Oscar selection as a joke. At this time, Chen Guang, who was in the courtroom, was thinking about Zhuo Jingxi and Prince's laboratory. He didn't know that the public opinion had become like this. If he had found out about this, he might have found a way to find the reporter and thank him properly. There was no other reason. It was precisely because this draft had exposed the truth that the people from the Motion Picture Association were suddenly pushed to the teeth of the storm. The big names in the association, who had planned to run to Europe immediately, found out very awkwardly that they couldn't leave. It wasn't that someone had stopped them, but now that the matter had been exposed, if they really ran away, wouldn't it be true that they were scared to the point of peeing their pants? If they left quietly, they could barely find an excuse, but they couldn't do that now. Even if that was really the case, people live with a face, trees live with a layer of bark. Everyone here was a person of status and prestige. In the future, they would have to go out and meet people. Therefore, these people quietly returned their plane tickets and took a bus back to Eden Manor. They announced to the public that they had nothing to do with Chen Guang at all, and that they were just here for a vacation. It didn't matter if they believed it or not, they believed it. If Chen Guang knew that he had unintentionally appeared in the Princeton District Court to deal with Zhuo Jingxi's matter, and instead he had taken a big detour to put invisible shackles on the legs of the people from the Motion Picture Association and tied them to Eden Manor, he would probably laugh his head off. In the courtroom, after another half an hour of confrontation, under Pizarro's deliberate guidance, although he gradually fell into a disadvantageous position, the thinking of the prosecution's team was slowly pulled into his train of thought. Pizarro, who was originally arguing with the other side about Zhuo Jingxi's motive, suddenly changed the topic and mentioned something else. Let me ask the plaintiff. In our opinion, even if the defendant really did take away the bottle containing the sample from the laboratory due to personal negligence. However, it was also debatable how valuable the things she had taken away were. For example, if the defendant took away a bottle containing distilled water, then can we think that the plaintiff is making a mountain out of a molehill? The prosecution lawyer was about to speak, but the head of Prince's legal department spoke first. Lawyer Pizarro, I think your question is ridiculous. If Dr. Zhuo had just taken a broom from the laboratory, of course we wouldn't have any objections. However, What she took away was the latest photocatalyst research results from our laboratory. There is no doubt about that. Pizarro smiled and teased. Yes, you are all great scientists. You can completely say that a bottle of silver paint is the latest research result, and that it is worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The judge slammed the table and said, "Defense lawyer, please watch your attitude and words." Pizarro nodded. "Your Honor, I have reason to believe that the plaintiff is deliberately exaggerating the value of the bottle that Dr. Zhua took away. If you want to prove its value, I think the plaintiff must come up with more evidence. Otherwise, I can assume that my client just took away some insignificant raw materials." The head of Prince's legal department was so angry that he was about to fly into a rage. The prosecution lawyer winked at him, then turned to Pizarro and said, "Then, Lawyer Pizarro, may I interpret what you said to mean that if we can prove the value of the evidence, then we can conclude that Dr. Zhua took away a valuable sample from Prince's laboratory?" Pizarro nodded. "Yes, but whether it was intentional or unintentional will still need to be judged by the judge." The prosecution lawyer grinned, then turned to the head of the legal department and nodded, feeling that he had finally led the famous lawyer Pizarro into his trap. Since they were going to sue Zhua Jingxi, how could they not have done the basic work? It seemed that all they needed to do now was produce the detailed accounts of when Prince's laboratory had funded Zhua Jingxi's experimental group, as well as the verification and appraisal of the results, and they would almost be able to convict the defendant. The head of the legal department and the prosecution lawyer looked at each other and understood each other's intentions. They had thought that Pizarro would turn this case into a protracted battle, and that it would take at least a few months of evidence collection and other wrangling before they could convict the defendant. They hadn't expected that Pizarro, the famous lawyer, would fail to live up to his reputation and reveal such an obvious loophole in the defense process, putting the defendant in a very disadvantageous position. Pizarro was so experienced that as soon as he saw the eyes of the prosecution lawyer and the plaintiff's representative meet, he could guess what they were thinking. He felt proud and disappointed at the same time. He was proud that his ability was much better than that of his peers, and that he could achieve whatever effect he wanted in court. He was also disappointed that after today's events, if his client, Chen Guang, couldn't come up with anything amazing other than compensation, his reputation in the industry would be affected. Reputation was almost equivalent to half a lawyer's rice bowl, and he had suffered a huge loss in order to get his client, Chen Guang, the $1.6 million. Not only did these people realize the change in the defense situation, but the slightly sleepy judge also felt refreshed. He had thought that this case would drag on for a long time, but he hadn't expected the dust to settle so quickly. The eyes of the reporters and spectators also lit up. The news reporters began to crazily type on the keyboard on their phones, wanting to publish the article as fast as possible before anyone else. The photo reporters began to take photos of the scene and manually mosaic them, ready to publish the news with pictures. The person in charge of Prince's legal department slowly stood up under the anticipation of the crowd. The book in his hand was the accounting records for the past half a year. Of course, there was something fishy about it. The total capital investment had been increased by about 60%. What was written in the book was the market price, but for a company as large as Prince, whether it was buying raw materials or experimental equipment, it was a proper big client, so the price was naturally lower than the market price. Since last June, Prince's laboratory's investment in Dr. Zhua's experimental group is detailed below. June 11th, purchased. About 10 minutes later, the head of the legal department finally finished reading the long bill. The total investment of Prince's laboratory in Dr. Zhua's group is as high as $73 million. The huge courtroom suddenly burst into an uproar. Many people hadn't expected that scientific research would burn so much money. The group led by Zhua Jingxi could only be described as average within Prince, and there were at least 100 similar groups within Prince. In just 6 months, they had burned through more than $16 million. The head of the legal department was particularly satisfied with the sensation his speech had caused. He even glanced in Zhua Jingxi and Chen Guang's direction with a slightly provocative expression, as if to say, "So what if you have a celebrity to protect you?" Everyone, it's not over yet. Here's the verification process of our results. The following papers have been published in major journals by Dr. Zhuo herself and her experimental group, as well as the project leader, Dr. Wertzman. The titles of the papers are Another 10 Minutes Passed. So, we believe that Zhuo Jingxi's behavior has caused us major economic losses, and we ask the judge to make a fair ruling. After saying that, the person in charge of the legal department finally felt proud and elated, as if he had reached the top and looked down on all the heroes. Pizarro's face was full of despair. Seeing this, the prosecution lawyer was proud. It took me less than a day to defeat Pizarro in court. This is my chance to make a name for myself. Lawyer for the defendant, what else do you have to say? With such a mood, the prosecution lawyer decisively hit Pizarro when he was down. Pizarro looked like he was struggling again. After a short moment of hesitation, he asked in a seemingly desperate manner, "May I ask the plaintiff and the prosecution's lawyer if the only reason you filed a lawsuit against my client is because the defendant's actions have caused you a total economic loss of $73 million US? The head of the legal department said firmly, "Of course." The prosecution lawyer also nodded. "That's right." Pizarro's expression suddenly changed again. He stopped talking and turned to look in Chen Guang's direction. The figure was higher than expected, but to Chen Guang, who had recently caused a sensation in the North American box office, it did not seem to make any difference. Under Pizarro's gaze, Chen Guang, who was sitting in the audience, slowly stood up. The judge banged his hammer again. "Those who have nothing to do with the trial, please sit down." This is a warning. Although he knew Chen Guang, he did not care who he was. The dignity of the court could not be tarnished. Chen Guang smiled. "Your Honor, I have something to do with the trial." Without waiting for the judge and the plaintiff to speak, Chen Guang suddenly said in a powerful voice, "On behalf of the defendant, Zhuo Jingxi, I am willing to promise in public that I will unconditionally compensate Prince Laboratories' economic loss of $73 million US. I will also bear all the costs of this lawsuit." Then the plaintiff has not suffered any losses at all, so the case is completely invalid. He raised his right hand high, and in it was a check that he had just written. Next to the check, he was holding his UBS black card between his fingers. Without a doubt, the number on this check was US $16. 73 million. The moment Chen Guang said this, the courtroom was in an uproar. Crazy. This Chinese man is crazy. No, he was a crazy man before. I've seen people spend a lot of money to pick up girls, but I've never heard of anyone spending more than 16 million US in public like him in court. Not to mention seeing it. You're even better than Murdoch, who gave hundreds of millions to Deng Wendy. Murdoch unwillingly lost the lawsuit and had no choice but to fork out money, but you took the initiative to spend the check without batting an eyelid. You're truly an invincible tycoon. The female reporter and the female audience held their hands in their hands. Their eyes were as bright as the sun. Please give me a dozen tycoons like this. I'm wet. I'm completely wet. In an instant, the huge courtroom was filled with flashes, and the sound of cameras snapping could be heard nonstop. The judges in the courtroom were stunned. The Prince Legal Department and the legal team were also stunned. The other local officials and agents in Princeton were also stunned. The officials from the Ministry of Science and Technology and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs who rushed over from Washington had their mouths wide open. Even the staff from the Chinese embassy were dizzy. Damn, I counted with my fingers. Isn't that 100 million renminbi? Regardless of the relationship between Zhuo Jingxi and Chen Guang, what more could a woman ask for when she had such a husband? In order to clear your name, 100 million renminbi was thrown away just like that. Zhuo Jingxi also did not expect Chen Guang to use such a simple and crude method to clear his name. Without hesitation, 100 million renminbi. His sacrifice was indeed too big. He loved money so much and would even skid to save fuel. But for me, I wanted to repay the debt, but how am I going to repay him in this lifetime? The reporters who had already released the trial results in advance were embarrassed. Damn, I thought this guy was just here to watch the show in court. Why didn't you tell us earlier that you would use such a ruthless method? What do we do now? We'll definitely be scolded by the editor-in-chief or the readers. But what can we do? We're also desperate. No, I object. We refuse to compensate. We demand severe punishment for the criminal. After a brief moment of confusion and shock, the head of Prince's legal department immediately reacted. Although $16 million wasn't a small amount of money, Prince didn't really care about it. What they really wanted was to make an example out of this case. On the one hand, it would deter the Chinese researchers all over America, and on the other hand, it would elevate the status of Prince's laboratory in the North American scientific community. They would rather not have the money. The plaintiff's legal team, next to the head of Prince's team, remained silent and did not continue with his words. Up until now, the plaintiff's legal team had finally guessed the plan of Chen Guang and the defense lawyer. That's right, they had planned to lose money from the very beginning. Especially since the beginning of the court session in the afternoon, Pizarro seemed to be constantly losing ground. But in fact, it was all a trap. All of Prince's accounting books had been laid out, and the exact number of losses had also been exposed. If the defendant was willing to pay the full amount of compensation, of course, the lawsuit would be over. In addition, the head of Prince's legal department and the defendant had publicly admitted that the only reason they had accused Zhuo Jingxi was because of the financial losses they had suffered. The so-called leaking of confidential technology and infringement of intellectual property could also be measured in terms of value, and that value was $73 million. This was a court, and anything said outside could be used as evidence. Words said in court could not be treated as child's play. There was no turning back. What was done was done. As expected, Pizarro immediately regained the initiative in the court. Your Honor, I think the plaintiff's objection is invalid. We have clearly stated the amount of compensation based on the financial losses suffered by the plaintiff, so the plaintiff has not suffered any damage. Furthermore, my client's mistake was purely due to his negligence. Now that we are willing to compensate, he is no longer a criminal. I think the plaintiff is suspected of infringing on my client's reputation. I reserve the right to file a lawsuit. The judge nodded. He couldn't wait for the matter to end like this. Yes, the plaintiff, please watch your words. The head of Prince's legal department looked at his client's team of lawyers. Say something. The plaintiff's lawyer stood up helplessly and said in a low voice, Sir, if the defendant is willing to pay the full amount of compensation, then our claim is no longer valid. This case has been closed. As the prosecution's lawyer, he was actually happy to see this result. The reason was simple. As the client's lawyer, if Prince successfully obtained more than $16 million in compensation, his law firm would, of course, get a commission according to the contract. No matter what, he had helped Prince win the lawsuit and received a sizable amount of compensation. Not only would his law firm's reputation in the industry not suffer any damage, but it would also rise by a notch. About 15 minutes later, this lawsuit, which people thought would last at least a few months, came to a dramatic end when Shen Guang completed the check transfer procedure in court. The face of the prince's legal department was ashen. It was worse than eating a fly. The mission he had received was to send Zhuo Jingxi to prison, but now she was acquitted. Who would want more than $10 million? Prince spent as much as $1 billion on research and development every year. A group of people walked out of the gate of the district court under the flashing lights of countless reporters and onlookers. The head of Prince's legal department glared fiercely in Zhuo Jingxi's direction. Dr. Zhuo, don't think that this matter is over. Even if you can escape the punishment of the law, you still can't escape the boycott of the global scientific community. Your unethical behavior will make you despised by the entire scientific community. You know how shameful your behavior is. Zhuo Jingxi felt a little guilty. When she took the things from the laboratory, she only thought of Chen Guang, and she had no intention of returning to the United States. Now that she was being criticized in public, she felt humiliated, but she couldn't refute it. Chen Guang looked back at him. Watch your words. I don't mind beating you up, and then we go back to court. I can compensate you for your medical expenses. The face of the head of Prince's legal department changed drastically. Even Pizarro, who was originally next to Chen Guang, quietly moved to the side. Recently, Chen Guang's reputation in North America had been too resounding. Apart from being a movie actor, his other identities were already known to everyone. Who would want to take a punch from the world's arm wrestling champion? Not caring about his reputation, the big boss of the legal department turned around and walked away quickly, cursing in a low voice, a barbarian who only knows how to solve problems with violence. Chen Guang looked at his back and shouted, "Sir, as you said just now, of course this matter is not over. We will meet again this afternoon at the latest." The head of the legal department turned around and looked at Chen Guang. "Dream on. I don't want to see you guys again." Chen Guang smiled and ignored him. On the other side, Pizarro spoke again. "Mr. Chen, if there's nothing else, I'll be leaving first. We had a good time working together this time, but since we lost the lawsuit, you don't have to pay the remaining 800,000 yuan. However, Chen Guang shook his head. "Mr. Pizarro, wait a minute. We still have a large intellectual property contract with Prince. I think I still need your legal assistance. Of course, I will pay you the remaining 800,000 yuan. Just treat it as a follow-up legal consultation fee." You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.